Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Weidman. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 118. Dennis Grove here with Kasper Ozolowski on the 15th of March with another fun episode of Submission Radio for you guys this week.
Absolutely. We have a juicy, stacked, sexy episode with a bunch of guests. Kicking off the episode will be Tyson Pedro, fresh off his UFC 209 win over Paul Craig. The surging Aussie will be coming back to Submission Radio. A lot of fun things to talk about there with Tyson. Something a little bit different. We've got Tommy Toehold making, I guess, 2 appearances this episode. Normally we get Tommy to do a bit of a fun recording and he discusses things about what's happening in the MMA world. He is actually going to be joining us for a chat, an interview. He recently celebrated 5 years of Tommy Toehold goodness, so we wanted to take a bit of time to reflect on that. If you've never heard Tommy Toehold speak in real life, this is your chance here. We have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, fresh off his fight with Tyron Woodley at UFC 209, talking about how he's dealing with that loss and what's next for him. We have the guys from FloCombat, Duane, Finley, and Hunter Homistek. For those of you who don't know, these guys basically did a massive MMA road trip where they went to all the best gyms and got a ton of interviews and footage with fighters, and they've just got a tremendous story to tell, so we figured we'd get them on, and obviously FloCombat do great stuff, so it's always fun chatting to them. Chris Weidman making his long-awaited debut on Submission Radio. There was a lot of false starts. A lot of times we were supposed to get Chris Weidman on the show. He is on the show this week, and there's a lot of chat about him in Gegard Mousasi, UFC 210, New York, all sorts of things, and that's not it. We've got another guest, don't we, Dennis?
Yeah, well, we're very happy to have Damon Martin back on the show again this week. A lot to talk to him about UFC Brazil, sort of talk about what's next for Barbosa, Gegard Gastelum, talk about this June 10th, the day that's been put aside for the T-Mobile Arena. What's going to happen? Is it actually put aside for Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor? Damon's going to tell us all about that and a lot more, so stick around to that. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with Damon. I'm excited to have him back on the program 2 weeks in a row, Cass, which is a lot of fun for us because he's a great friend of the show and so much fun having him. But Cass, the other big thing that we got to do before we can get into all these crazy guests, and it is a big show, is hand out another sweet, sexy, spicy double pass to the John Kavanagh shows here in Melbourne and Sydney.
That's right. John Kavanagh is coming down next month. He's not far away at all. The first show is in Sydney on the 7th of April, and then another one in Melbourne on the 18th of April. You can get info for those tickets at eventbrite.com.au or ticketek.com.au. But as you already know by now, we are giving away free double passes every single week to some lucky listeners, and I mean, the show goes on. We're still giving away more tickets. And this week's winner is a man by the name of Gorilla Ream, also known as Arthur. Arthur is his real name, but we know him as Gorilla Ream, always giving us great feedback on Twitter and social media and a lot of great support. His review wins the double passes. All you guys got to do is send in an iTunes review. Email us at info@submissionradio.com to let us know which show you want to attend. I'm going to read out Arthur's review. It's a pretty sexy one. It is titled The Spicy Boys of MMA Podcasting. I love it already. These spicy boys drop more podcast heat on a weekly basis than the spicy tuna rolls at my local sushi joint. I've added this show to my weekly podcast rotation, and so should you. Their weekly guest lineup is straight fire, from the current stars of the MMA landscape to MMA media personalities to old school veterans like Bas Rutten and Don Fry. Submission Radio brings you a diverse group of guests on a weekly basis. It'll be the best decision you'll make on a Thursday in Australia or Wednesday in the US. What an amazing review. Even plugs the days the Submission Radio comes out. It was an easy decision to give away the tickets to Gorilla Ream. And like we mentioned, you can do the same thing. Just give us that iTunes review and email us info@submissionradio.com and let us know which show you want to attend.
That's right, Cass. I mean, it's a fun competition, but not many weeks left now. So if you guys are thinking about it, definitely jump on and do it as soon as possible. We want to give away these double passes, and we want to see some fun, exciting, and interesting reviews. So the more interesting you can make them, the more fun it'll be for us to read out on the show.
Yeah, in the meantime, you guys can catch us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS and on Facebook, facebook.com/SubmissionRadioAU. We always respond to your messages, so if you contact us, we will have a chat. And as a reminder, if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to drop some comments in the comment section below on pretty much anything you hear during this episode, whether it's interviews, whether it's our thoughts on any of the big topics, or even Damon's thoughts on anything you hear. But without further ado, it's time to get the show on the road. It is a massive, massive show. And Dennis, I believe our first guest is on the line.
All right, guys, joining us on the show is a man who had another massive win over Paul Craig at UFC 209, Australia's new favorite light heavyweight, Tyson Pedro. Welcome back to Submission Radio.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back on, especially so soon after your big win. We heard you've just come back from your post-UFC 209 holiday. Tell us, where did you go and what did you get up to?
Yeah, I just went up to Mum's place for a bit, got away for a bit of a fishing trip. Fell in the water. It was good to be away. I don't know, I just turned off my phone and got to stay away for a little bit. So I got to see the wife and hang out with the family. Needed that for a little bit of a break.
Whereabouts, though? What country are we talking?
Oh, no, just in Australia. My parents are here, so I didn't get an actual holiday. My wife actually came over to Las Vegas, so that was her holiday.
Oh, wonderful. So your wife came down to Las Vegas, but you guys didn't spend too much time over there. I'm just wondering, how did it feel to be in the fight capital of the world now that you've experienced it? What was it like having fight week and fighting in Vegas?
Yeah, it wasn't too crazy for me, but my wife enjoyed it. She got a 7-day holiday. I stayed in the room just not eating or drinking, so it's a bit, it wasn't too special for me. Walking through the casinos, there's a lot of smoke that got me, but other than that, it was awesome to be over there and just how much the people love the fight game. It's pretty crazy.
So just for people at home listening right now, what exactly did your wife get up to? So while you're dieting and getting ready for your fight, what are some of the things your wife got up to in Vegas?
Yeah, so I thought she was coming over for 3 days just for the fight, and she surprised me and came for 7 days. She went to the Grand Canyon and Hoover Dam, went shooting, did everything I would have loved to do.
Wow. Was a part of you jealous? I mean, obviously, you were there for business and you had a great win. But I mean, when we spoke to you before the fight, you were kind of like, no, I'm going to Vegas, or business. I'm not going to do anything. It's not about that. I'm not going to be corrupted. Looking back on it, are you kind of like, you know what? I wish I stayed a little bit longer, did those fun things.
I was devastated I didn't get to do all of that. She had an awesome time. Yeah, I just missed out on everything. The only thing I wanted to do the whole time while I was walking through Vegas, I saw everyone walking with those big Slurpee pina coladas. So as soon as the fight was finished, I got one of those.
That's awesome. We'll talk about your post-fight celebrations a little bit later, but by the way, I love your wife. I'm going to learn a lot from your wife, because I love how she turned sort of like a 3-day trip into a week-long holiday under the pretense that she was going to come down and help you, and then had the best time ever. That is perfect for me. I need to learn from that. These are the types of moves that I think will work with my girlfriend as well. So I am learning as we're talking in this interview, Tyson. Let's talk about Paul Craig, though. I mean, he had the face paint and he was pretty animated during fight week. We saw you responded with a bit of laughter, but honestly, what was it like to deal with him leading up to the fight?
It was a good experience, I think, because it was something different. I haven't had an opponent who talked a bit of crap and stuff like that before the fight leading up to it. So I actually enjoyed it. His fans got behind him as well. It was something different. Like, it's good to mix it up, I guess. The reason why I got in the fight game is to travel the world and meet different people. So it's pretty cool that I got to experience that. It didn't really faze me too much because I don't know. You can sort of I believe you can sort of tell when someone's putting it on, and it felt a bit put on, especially when the first time he got in my face. But the reason I was explaining why I started busting out laughing is because he came up and he was doing this real tough face and he started breathing heavy, and when he was doing it, his nose was tickling my nose and I couldn't help but bust out laughing.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, you mentioned before when you were on the show last time how you were getting, a bit of shit on social media from some of his fans. Did you have any more memorable messages or encounters with his fans leading up to the fight? I imagine they would have stepped up their trolling game, in the last few days leading up to the fight. Yeah, there's some pretty good ones on there, like even ones that made me laugh. I got the bear juice gonna crush you like some bagpipes, you kangaroo shagger, and there were some good ones out there. But all of them, I just wrote back the normal message going, thanks for all your support. It's funny because you wouldn't have known who I was if it wasn't for Paul Craig. So it's good for me. And after the fight, they all said, fair play to you. Good fight. That's amazing, cool though, that you actually responded to the trolls, because I think most of the time, like, if someone, sends something to a fighter, they don't get a response, or it's from like a social media manager, but you actually took the time to respond to everybody. Yeah, even on my messages, it's taken me like a week. There's been so many messages and support and hate, but I try to get back to everyone. Like, for me, that's that big thing, getting back to the fans. Like,
I don't know. I think even if I changed one person's day, it would be something cool. I always try and write a nice message to someone.
Oh, that's great to hear, Tyson. And we spoke to Coach Winklejohn about you, and he was very, very happy with what you brought to Jackson Winklejohn's, very high up on you. How did it feel having him in your corner for the fight?
Yeah, it was awesome. Out the back, he almost gave me a heart attack. We were doing the warm-up for pads, and Winkler, it's always hard. He always has to try and tell me to calm down because it doesn't matter. Like, I hurt my hand coming up, and I don't know, I automatically go hard, and he always has to try and pull me up because he gets excited as well. So, yeah, it was cool having him there, and it's just I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
So you said you almost had a heart attack. What do you mean? From the moment of actually having Coach Wink there, or from the warm-up? What do you mean by that?
No, it's just the warm-up. We started getting a bit excited. Every time we do pads, we get excited and start going too hard.
Oh,
and
wow.
we have to both try and calm ourselves down.
That's hilarious. I mean, we saw a really dominant performance from you, and fans were impressed with the way that you were able to use your knees in the clinch to, impact and hurt Craig. Was that something that you were working on going into the fight, and sort of a game plan that you worked on with Wink?
Not the knees. I've always had the knees, but I didn't think that I was going to be able to sort of move him around so easily, and just being able to push his head closer to the knee, it just came naturally. But like I've always said, we practice for everything. When I'm training, I'm trying to just better myself. So however I come in, it's just I practice across the board. So there's little things that we practice that we said might work on Paul, and they did. And I also just been training for everything else as well.
We know you were pumped to be on the same card as Mark Hunt and Dan Kelly. Both had very different performances, with Hunt losing and Kelly winning. Did you get a chance to speak with them, and what was your reaction to both performances?
Yeah, I haven't spoke to Mark yet. Hopefully I'll see him soon. But it's hard with Mark because you've got two dangerous strikers, and in heavyweight or light heavyweight, you never know where it's going to end up. So you could, anything like a loss or a win is one punch away for either of us. So I was actually a bit upset. I saw I think it was Channel 7 put up a headline saying about Mark being dropped like a sack of potatoes. So I wasn't too happy with that because they don't get behind you when you're winning. So it's nice when they see bad things happening too.
Yeah.
But with Dan Kelly, sorry.
No, you go.
Yeah, Dan Kelly, I was certain he was going to win. I was telling everyone before the fight, going, you better get behind him. He's going to pull this off and he's going to beat Rashad. Not many people believe me, and definitely not many people were believing in him. So we're talking about, funny you mentioned the trolls and stuff, we're talking about the live, Facebook Live, and he was just like, they're all bullies on there because they were just trolling him saying bad stuff. But I think it was funny and I was responding to it. So it's just, it's part of the game. You're going to get hate on social media no matter what.
Well, now we know who looks stupid because he came out there, he won, and he had a great performance. And Dan Kelly's always the guy who's kind of going to bring the show home. Like, he's always got that feel-good moment of the night. But back onto you. You were in Las Vegas after such a big win. We're expecting celebration stories here on the show. I mean, I know you were all business, but after the fight, you mentioned you got one of those big Slurpee pina coladas. Where did that lead? Where did that lead you? How did it go? And did you end up losing anyone on the roof or waking up with a tiger in your bathroom?
Yeah, I was hoping that I was just going to have a quiet night in because we got back to the room and I was just exhausted, tired. But turns out my manager sorted out a booth and some bottles at a club, so that they had us. Tiesto was playing at the club there, so
wow.
I think it got a bit more wild than I thought it was going to be. All of my family, everyone got into the club, so that was surprising in itself. I was surprised they let all the Pedros into one club.
And yeah, a big shout out to your manager Zen, who does a great job and is a great guy. You are now 6-0 professionally and 2-0 in the UFC thus far. I mean, what's the feeling like? And does a part of you have to remind yourself that this is real life?
Yeah, no. I feel like I always knew I wanted to be here, but I think it's going to start picking up a lot faster now with the opponents, and now that people are starting to sort of maybe not even think of legitimate, but the first fight was a bit like everyone was like, 3 weeks notice. He got caught. He has no stand-up. I think now people are going, okay, maybe he does have a bit more than just a ground game. So I don't know. We're still trying to figure out where to go from here, and hopefully in the next week I should know if I'm fighting soon. I've still got to get medically cleared, but I have a feeling it's going to be a big year.
And we'll talk about that in just a moment, but we know that Coach Wink is obviously really big on you being over at Jackson's. Have you thought about if, you'd be going back there to train for your next fight and maybe make it a full-time gig there?
Yeah, I'm definitely going back there. I don't know if I'll be able to do full-time, but just with my wife over here, her job's just as important as mine. So I think I'll probably go over maybe again in 8 weeks, maybe 10, but it's a long time away from home, so just see what's the best option.
One of the great things about you being in light heavyweight, Tyson, is the fact that there's not too much young talent or new talent sort of in the top 15 in the light heavyweight division. It's not like it was back in the day where that was sort of the staple division of the UFC. When you sort of look at the rankings and some of the fighters up the top, I mean, it's very top heavy, but what do you actually think of what the top 15 in the light heavyweight division actually looks like at the moment?
I know about 3 names. Honestly, in there actually that's about it. Honestly, and that's not anything against anyone in there. There's a bunch of killers in there. I know there is, but it's just me not looking into it. I know that there's a lot of wrestlers. It gets a lot more wrestler heavy as we go into the top 15. So that's something that I've got to look at and start working my game around. There's wrestlers with big right hands in there. So.
Well, that's crazy that you really only sort of pay attention to 3 names. Who are those 3 names, just out of curiosity?
Johnson, Jones, and Cormier.
Wow.
Actually, I do lie. I do lie. Gustafsson is one of my favorite as well. But I only just found out that Manoa was in light heavy as well when I saw him on the UFC game. My little brother was playing it yesterday.
Wow, that's crazy. Who would have thought that you would have discovered, any fighters in your division from a game? And it's crazy how the names that you mentioned really are just the title contenders and guys that have recently competed for the title, like Gustafsson. But onto your next fight. I mean, you mentioned that you're sort of waiting for the next week or so to find out. Are you looking at getting back in there as soon as possible? And are you potentially interested in being on the UFC New Zealand card, which is going to be happening in June?
Yeah, at first I was hoping to go back to America, but there's a lot of fans and support from Auckland, and I think that's going to be a good move for me. So to go over there and fight, and especially in front of a lot of Pacific Islanders, and so close to home, a lot of Australians can come over as well. I don't know who the opponent was. It's good with my coaching staff. They get the names from either Zen or the UFC, and they look at who they think would be a good fight for me, and then we just work it out from there.
It'll be an interesting situation because Paul Craig, he was a pretty big name, and many believed he was going to be one of the main fights on the UFC Scotland card. So you've got a big win over him. I know you don't know many of the guys in the division. You just mentioned that you only know 4, but are you sort of hoping that your next opponent is someone with as big or bigger name than Paul, or are you sort of in the position where you don't mind and you'll sort of just take anyone presented to you?
Yeah, I don't really want to be that fighter that just takes anyone. It's all about having smart fights that are fake good fights. I don't want to have boring fights. So we're entertainers and we want the crowd to love the fight that's going to happen. So that's mainly what I'd like. I'd prefer a stylistic fight over anything. But if I'm definitely looking ahead, I always want a better opponent or a harder opponent or something that's going to challenge me. I don't think since my second fight I've ever had something that was easier. So I'm going to keep that on a roll.
And quickly, before we let you go, Tyson, we got to find out, did you find a way to get your Tyson Pedro UFC cabinet back into the country?
No, I wish. I'm asking one of my friends if he could make it. I stole the sign off the top. Actually, I probably shouldn't say stole. I borrowed the name that said Tyson Pedro on top, and hopefully that got back on the plane. My dad almost ruined it because he stepped on it. So.
That's hilarious. What happened? What was the issue? How come you couldn't get it back in the country?
Probably didn't fit in my bag. They probably wouldn't notice the Samoan guy rolling out the big cupboard.
I love it because I feel like next time you fight on the UFC card, they're going to try and staple down all the furniture. But in all seriousness, if you did manage to get it back into Sydney, what were your thoughts on it? Would you have used it for maybe a good TV cabinet? I was having a good look at it, and I thought, it could possibly be a good little feature in the living room.
Yeah, I'm going to start trying to make a bit of a man cave. Try and put it together. My mum and wife have been keeping like every single news article that's been coming out, so it's going to start getting busy. Hopefully I could have made some more shelves on there to maybe hold a belt one day.
I think that'd be awesome. And what you do, Tyson, is you wait for another local card, like in Melbourne or Sydney, and then you don't have to worry about luggage. You just, you put it on the back of a truck and you go back to your house.
You maybe request a coffee table, some couches, just really go for it. Tyson Pedro furniture all throughout the man cave.
Yeah, if it's got my name on it, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to take it. So.
Yeah, the Tyson Pedro furniture and apparel line. As we let you go, Tyson, there's a lot of excited Aussies who are pumped about you win. What's your message to them?
I just want to say thanks for all the support. I honestly got a ridiculous amount of messages and support coming through, and I just want to keep putting on the show for everyone and making sure that, trying to build the MMA in Australia and the fan base. It's been pretty exciting, and it's gonna blow up massive, and I can't wait for it. So thanks, guys.
Well, he's an incredibly classy guy, and we can't wait to see what happens next. We hope that Tyson Pedro furniture really comes together, and who knows, Tyson, maybe you could be fantastic furniture, IKEA. Forget all that. Tyson Pedro, that's the new furniture line fans should be getting onto. So, guys, make sure to follow Tyson on Twitter at Tyson_Pedro_. And make sure to jump on, and shoot him a message. I mean, you heard it here first. He responds to the trolls, so I'm sure if you're a fan, you might get a message back as well. Tyson, thank you so much for being on the program, and enjoy your rare time off before I'm sure we'll hear a new fight announcement just around the corner.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. You too.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest has made many an appearance as Tommy Toehold on Submission Radio. He also hosts his excellent weekly podcast, Bushido Talk, twice a week. And with a big 5-year anniversary for his Triple THS last week, it is a pleasure to welcome back the man behind the character back on the show in an interview to discuss this amazing milestone. Tommy, welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going?
It's going awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for the kind words.
Well, it's our pleasure. Now, for fans who don't know, we'll be referring to you as Tommy throughout the show, but your identity is still as much of a mystery as it was at the beginning when you started doing the show. Tell us, what's it been like living in the shadows for the last 5 years?
It's been fantastic. I highly recommend it to anyone that can live in the shadows. No, it's nice. It's, I've never been one that really sought fame of any sort, so it's kind of cool that I can separate Tommy and myself and just sort of have a private life, but also, be able to put this product out here that people get to see and enjoy. And I enjoy those aspects of it, but it's very nice to know that, I have my privacy, and it's actually worked out really well. It wasn't my intention at first, but now that it's gone this way, I think it's for the best.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Sia, the singer, she's got all those songs like Chandelier. She's kind of got the same thing going on where she always has her, back turned to the camera. She wears that blonde, well, no, it's not a wig, but, she kind of has that look, and she can go to Target or Kmart and no one even knows who she is. So I think she kind of got that from you. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally think she absolutely stole that from me. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And, I agree. I have seen her, and I think that's cool. And, yeah, I mean, that's more power to her. I think it's awesome.
Well, when you're not shining bright like a diamond, have you had anyone catch on to your secret identity yet? Because I guess the question we're asking is, how much is the official body count up to? Because you've had to probably assassinate a few people to keep your secret a secret.
Surprisingly, nobody so far. But nobody's ever come across. I've had a lot of people send me messages and say, I know who you are. And I'm like, oh, really? And so, I'll say, oh, go ahead, tell me. And then it's always just some random person. I don't know where they got the name or where they got this person. But, yeah, it's one of those things that I just don't put a lot out there. And I feel like, I guess if somebody really did some sleuthing, they could find out. And there are people that have met me in the industry. But, so far, so good. I think most people have sort of respected it, and the people that do sleuth apparently haven't done a good enough job sleuthing. So for now, I remain anonymous.
Oh, there you go. The challenge is set to all the sleuths out there. Let's talk about your personal life, Tommy, because when we get asked what we do for a living, we say, MMA podcast, we always get this interesting response. What's your go-to response when people are asking you what you do for a living, and when speaking to potential lady friends, do you sort of try to explain your job, or do you have a potential, decoy answer ready to go?
I try to explain it. It's not easy, obviously. Most people are like, wait, what? I don't understand. Even the concept of YouTube as a career, I think a lot of people are still like, wait, what? I don't get it. Like, what is that? How does that work? How do you get paid? So even that alone, even if I were doing something normal that I could just show them a video, hey, look, this is me, and I talk, and then I get paid for that. That alone would be a challenge. But yeah, I thought about kind of going the Bruce Wayne Batman, going completely full with that and just lying about what I do. But it's just, I don't know. I need to come up with a simpler answer, though. I agree, though, because yeah, when I try to explain it to them, it's usually just like, wait, what? You're a cartoon? I don't get it. And then they look at it, and if they don't watch MMA, they're like, what on earth is this? Like, it's just, it's usually, it doesn't really end very well. So very, very rarely, unless somebody knows what the sport is or something, then they can get excited about it. But yeah, I do tell people what I do if I feel like it won't affect my secret identity if they're maybe not around the community much. But yeah, it's it's definitely a weird conversation. I'll give you that.
What are the family catch-ups like? Do you have that weird uncle sitting in the back that's like, hey, does a YouTube cartoons for a living? Become a plumber, Tommy. What are you doing with your life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, there's certainly stuff like that, and especially at first. Because at first it wasn't like it was making me money, but it wasn't, what it is now. And, I wasn't on TV or anything like that. So at first it was much harder to explain. And yeah, you go to a holiday with the family and it's like, oh, okay, I got to explain this to my extended family, what exactly is going on. And of course they don't understand it. They don't get it. But now it's a little bit easier so I just sort of skip all that now with them. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm on TV now. And then they're like, oh wow, that's great. And then they get that. So that has helped a little bit. But yeah, at first especially, I was getting a lot of that.
It's good that you found the silver lining. If it was me, I'd get tired of explaining after like two times explaining. I just lie and say like I'm a garbage man or I'm an accountant or something easy like that. But it's been a crazy time in the MMA world. I mean, 5 years ago it was a different time. How have you found the MMA game now compared to when you first started your show, Tommy? And if you had to choose, when were the jokes easier to write, then or now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say the one thing that's changed is the exposure. There's just so many more eyes on the sport now. It's crazy. When I first started, Ronda was in Strikeforce. Strikeforce still existed. I mean, it was just a different time. And I felt like, even though we'd had that run with Brock Lesnar, that was obviously, super popular back in the 2009 to 2011-ish, I still felt like the sport had not really hit the mainstream, whereas now I do feel like it has. I feel like people more casually understand what the sport is and how it exists. So that is definitely, in terms of just the sport itself, to me has been the biggest change since I started with the rise of Ronda and Conor and things like that. In terms of the jokes, that's a tough one because I think probably earlier it was easier because the expectation was a lot lower. I look at some of the old episodes and I think, wow, nobody would laugh at this now. Like nobody would think this is funny. It would be so played out. And the expectation's higher now because I've stepped my game up sometimes. I say sometimes because I don't always. But sometimes I'll do something really elaborate and people are like, whoa, we want that all the time. And I'm like, oh no, what did I do? But I would say it's definitely more challenging now, even with someone like Conor, who has more material than I could ever ask for. So many people understand and hear what he says that sometimes it's hard to also like get in what those people want to hear that he said, but then make it an original thing as well. Like write my own material. Cause like with him, it's like, oh, everybody's expecting me to say all these different little catchphrases he throws out there, but I don't want to just repeat what he said because then I get comments that are saying, oh, you basically just read off what he said. I mean, you didn't do anything different. So Conor can be a little bit of a challenge, and definitely in the early days when I had no idea what I was doing, it was a little bit easier. I could just do a fake voice and really have no content at all, and people would just go, oh, that's kind of funny. Like, he did a voice. So, yeah, the game is getting more challenging, but I enjoy it.
It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of the South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and they mentioned how with this whole Trump situation, they found it hard to write content because, you know, what was happening in real life was funnier than anything that they could write, and they were kind of like stuck. And it kind of sounds like that's the same thing with your Conor McGregor situation. Do you find that the longer you go, the harder it is to keep sort of, you know, trying to be fresh, trying to be original, trying to create new content? Like another YouTuber, obviously the biggest one in the world, is PewDiePie, and you can see that he's kind of going a bit crazy with having to do videos every day. Do you sort of get to that point where another event's coming up and you're like, oh man, the people are expecting something? It's pretty tough to, you know, keep putting out content.
It can be tough, especially when somebody's in the news so much. Like again with Conor, you know, it was for a while there. He was like every other video. Obviously, it's died down a bit because he's taken some time off. Although he still makes headlines almost every day. But you know, it's like, oh well, what can I do? You know, how can I do this over and over and over again without it seeming stale? And that has definitely been a challenge. The other challenge is when you know, because I've sort of set this schedule now where I would love to do daily content. I still try to. It is definitely a challenge. But, you know, with the weekly content and doing postmortems for each event, that has certainly become a challenge when it's a small card. You know, when they have a card that's in the middle of nowhere and, you know, here in the U.S. we have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to watch it on Fight Pass or something. That becomes a challenge because I'm dealing with a lot of fighters that aren't necessarily these, you know, top headliner guys. I mean, of course, the main event usually are names people know. But when I'm trying to fill up a postmortem, you know, with 4 or 5 fighters that are there to talk, it can be hard when I'm dealing with fighters that don't necessarily have people's eye yet, and I don't really know what to do to sort of make jokes about them. And that's honestly the thing that takes the most time, I think, is when we get situations like that where I will sit there for more, you know, days at a time and thinking like, I don't know what to do with these people. Like, how do I make this funny? So that's definitely been a challenge as well.
I've always wondered, what is the process like when you do come up with content? Are you sort of jotting down notes as you go through the event and then put together some kind of basic script? Or are you doing a lot of improv stuff with just sort of bullet points that you want to play around with? What's sort of a general process to putting one of these shows out for you?
It depends. Sometimes I will be feeling a bit, I don't know, more confident, and I won't script at all. I will simply just go off the cuff. I'll turn on my microphone, I'll hit record, and I will just throw it out there and see what happens. Wow. Or sometimes I'll be driving somewhere, and I'll just turn the recorder on my phone and just, you know, free flow. What comes out? Like, let me just bang out a skit, you know, off the top of my head, and then I will re-record it when I get back. But usually it involves writing. I usually make the visuals first, just so I have the fighters. And while I'm making the visuals, I kind of get time to sort of think about ideas, what I might want to do with them. And then at that point, I sit down and usually write the script out. And then the rest of it's fairly easy unless there's an impression that's really challenging. But yeah, that's usually the process. Every once in a while, though, like I said, I'll get that confidence, or it's a subject I feel like, I can just nail this without writing it out. Or it's somebody I do so often that I feel like, I could just probably wing it and make their stuff. I think I did a John Jones, Daniel Cormier episode one time like that, where I just sort of bickered back and forth with myself as the two characters for a moment and then put it out there. So, yeah, it depends, but usually it's that, you know, make the visuals, write the script out, then I do the impressions, and then I put the animations together.
Yeah, it's a crazy amount of work, and I think it makes it even more impressive knowing that there are times where you just kind of flow and go off the cuff. That's crazy. And, you know, while driving, no less. I mean, you're getting primo content while you're driving. That's amazing. Let's talk about the actual anniversary. 5 years, it's a huge deal. Tell us, how did you celebrate it, Tommy?
You know what? I mean, I did celebrate in that I made a video about it. Like, that was kind of my celebration. I mean, I took a moment to kind of reflect and look back on it, and I kind of skimmed through some of the old episodes, but I'm not really one to, I don't know. A lot of these milestones that have come up, I mean, I'm incredibly grateful and you know, very happy about all of them. But I'm not much of a celebrator, I guess. I didn't go out and have a drink. I didn't, buy myself a fancy meal or anything. I just sort of went, oh, that's cool. I'm at 5 years. This is awesome. I don't know. I always sort of underreact to everything. I remember when I got, back on Fox, obviously this is like a huge deal and I was so excited and I was so happy about it, but I didn't like go out and do anything. I was just like, hey, call the family. I'm back on Fox. Like, cool. And that's it. So I don't know. I'm kind of weird that way. But it certainly is incredible to think that I've been able to do this for 5 years now. I mean, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be doing this at all, I would not have believed you. And had you told me I'd be going this long and still be able to do this, I certainly wouldn't believe you. So it's definitely been an unbelievable ride, and I still can't believe it's still going.
It's interesting that you say that. When you first started the show, how long did you think you were going to do it for? How long did you give yourself to sort of do the show and really put yourself in it and really focus on it?
Honestly, I don't think I really focused on it at all. I didn't think it was going to be anything. It was one of these things that I'd recently been interested in animation, and I mean, I say animation, obviously very crude animation, but I had been interested in that and YouTube as a platform and all these things, and I just sort of thought, hey, this will be a fun thing I do because I really like MMA. I never thought that it would be anything. So, I was working and doing other things when I first started. So this was just sort of like hey, when I get done working, it's like a little hobby that I have. I get to, play around with animations and make voices. And after about, 6 months, it became apparent that this could maybe be a thing. And that's when I started taking it more seriously. But at first, it was just sort of like, hey, I'm having fun, and oh wow, people are reacting to this, and I never imagined in my wildest dreams that it would become what it's become.
It's crazy to see where you are now, and over the last 5 years, there's been plenty of classic content. If you had to pick sort of a top three, what stands out to you? Can you even narrow it down to three? Moments that stand out to you and that are most memorable.
Oh wow. Like of the shows, like what my favorite, my top three, or just in general, like with the experiences I've had.
The shows, like top three shows that you feel like stood out the most, maybe got the most traction, maybe are the most memorable, or even your favorites to do.
Well, one thing, the one that stood out the most to me, just because it was the first thing I did that went viral, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy, was the glitch video.
In EA UFC, right?
Yeah,
yes.
EA UFC, and that was just surreal. To have that sort of reaction, because I'd never had that with a video. I mean, obviously my videos had done very well, and I was very happy with them, but like nothing where it was, millions and things like that. And I was on, I think, like the front page of Reddit for a moment with that video, and
wow,
that was kind of mind blowing. So that one definitely stands out, especially because it was such a on the whim thing. I had seen that people were talking about all these glitches. And I remember sitting there and I was like, it'd be funny if I just like ran a commentary over these. And I never thought like, oh, this is going to be a huge thing. I just thought, this kind of amuses me and I'll put it out there and hopefully people laugh. And then it just blew up and it was crazy. But so that one stands out. I'm really happy with last year's Halloween trilogy episode. I did 3 little mini stories that weren't MMA related. I mean, obviously they were with fighters, but making that was hard, and it was fun, and I love horror as a genre so much, so to get to kind of delve into that again and have fun with it, because I had done something similar a long time ago, but I really didn't have the skills to pull it off, and I felt like I did a lot better this time, so that one stands out to me as well. And there's an episode I did way back with Chael Sonnen. Not actual, I mean, Chael has been on the show, and that's super cool, but it was an impression of Chael Sonnen. And this one stands out to me simply because it afforded me a huge opportunity, and it stands out in my mind because of that. I was with Dana White, and this is how I ended up getting with Fox. a Fox executive came in to the room, and Dana pulled this episode, superstar Chael Sonnen, up on his phone and showed this executive the video. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, like I got so nervous. It's weird watching a video that you've made with other people.
Yeah.
But, they watched it and the guy was like, oh man, this is, I love this. This is great. Let's put something together. And then, things went from there. And so that one stands out in my mind as well, as kind of a crazy thing that propelled me forward. So yeah, I would say those three off the top of my head.
Well, I was going to say Dana White's a big fan of the show. Has he spoken to you lately about the big 5-year anniversary? And if you guys have spoken, what was that like?
I have not spoken to him recently, but I did want to send him a message and thank him for this second round on Fox. Not that he wasn't directly involved this time, but the fact that I'm on again, it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't on the first time. So I plan on sending him a message and thanking him. But no, I haven't actually spoken to him recently. He seems pretty busy. I don't know. I always feel like I'm bugging everybody, so I never really like message people because I'm always worried that they're busy doing something and I'm gonna be bugging them, ruining their day or something.
Yeah, we always say how you are one of the nicest guys in MMA, and I think that kind of attitude basically cements that. Now, Tommy, it wouldn't be an interview if we didn't interview a couple of characters from the show that fans have grown to love. So I hope you're ready for it. Hope you got the vocal cords ready. We'll start with Anderson Silva. Anderson, tell us, what has been the best thing about being on Tommy Toehold?
Oh, no. Oh, my God. Okay. I wish I would have prepared for this. Oh, my God. Okay. Let's see. Anderson. Oh, my goodness. What would he say to that question? Oh, my God. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't even think, like, my brain was not in that space to do an impression.
That's all good. And this is, by the way, my fault because I organized the interview. I could have said, oh, by the way, Tommy, we're going to ask you a couple of questions in the characters. It's totally – I mean, I know that Tommy Toehold's going to be on the show later, and he'll be giving us a top 3 we're talking about UFC Brazil. So if you don't have it in you right now, it's totally cool. No problems whatsoever.
I just – you know what it is? Like I told you that I do impromptu when I'm driving around and stuff, but
you're not driving now. That's what it is, right? You're sitting in a chair not driving.
I'm not driving. I don't know why, but for some reason this has always been a problem. It's funny. I was on the Anik and Florian podcast yesterday, and they had me do an impression of Yoel Romero, and I feel like I just tanked. Like, it was the worst impression. Like, it didn't even sound like I normally do it. I don't even know what I was saying. For some reason, when it comes to, like, interviews and I got to do an impression, I just, like, freeze up. I guess I'm not much of a live performer. My apologies on that. I wish I would have what were the other characters? Maybe one of them will spark and I'll be able to do it.
Well, you got a bit of an option here that you could choose from. And I'll tell you what we'll do is We'll read them out to you and we'll see if anything kind of feels good to you. One of them is your favorite, Conor McGregor. Another one is another one of your favorites, GSP. And, of course, we're going to ask Tommy Toehold himself a question as well.
Oh, my goodness. What was the Conor question? Maybe that one will work.
All right. Well, in case Conor is there next to you, I just wanted to ask him quickly. He's won 2 UFC titles, but he's also been on the Tommy Toehold show. So I just wanted to know what stands out as the biggest achievement.
Oh, my God. These questions are so good. You guys are so awesome, and I'm totally tanking right now. Oh.
No.
We're such dicks for not telling you about this beforehand. We feel terrible.
No, you guys aren't. This is funny. Oh, I wish I had even that. Like, I'm thinking, like, oh, my God. It's funny, like, for some reason, when I do voices, there's always, like, certain phrases I have to say when I start an impression because it helps me get it right.
Yeah.
So with Conor, I was wondering what you were gonna say because I always end up saying, "Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing." Because for some reason that conversation with Nate always is how I get into my Conor voice.
Yeah.
But I suck, guys. I'm so sorry. I wish I would have. You know what? I should always it's you say that you guys should have told me, but you know what I should have done? I should always have like a little, I don't know, notebook or notepad open that's like, oh, if somebody asks me to do a voice as this person, I will say X. If somebody asks me to, I will say. That's what I should have done. See, I should have been prepared for you guys. So that's on me, not on you guys.
You know what? This is going to be like in Seinfeld. You're going to be like George Costanza. You're going to wake up like at 4 a.m. in the middle of the night, and you're going to be like, Jokestar's the one, baby. You're going to catch a flight to Australia and get us back on this interview, and then there'll be impressions.
Oh, trust me, like you have no idea. Like for the rest of the night, it'll be on my mind what I should have said in each one of them. I'm not even kidding. You're absolutely right. Like it will eat me alive that I wasn't able to step my game up in this moment.
No, don't even worry about it. I mean, the truth is, we didn't mention anything about this to you, and we really want to sort of focus on this big milestone of 5 years. So, I mean, let's sort of focus back to that. It's been 5 years. You're obviously doing amazing work with Bushido Talk, which is another great podcast. Tell us, I know you're not the type of guy that really plans ahead, but now that you're so successful and there's so many great things happening, is there anything else on the horizon? Do you have any idea of what's next, or even possibly if there's anything new that people can sort of expect in the future?
Yeah, I do plan on doing more. I don't know exactly what it is, but I have felt recently like I'm not there's more I can do with Tommy. There's more I can do in the MMA realm. I haven't quite figured out what that's going to be yet, but it is something that I've been brainstorming recently. And the other thing that I'm really interested in, sort of outside of that, but in relation to it, is working with people that want to be on YouTube. Finding people that I think have talent and that want some help and kind of guiding them a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like you mentioned PewDiePie. I'm not saying I'm like some kind of world beater over here, but I do feel like I have enough experience now, knowledge of the platform, and understanding about how it works to sort of help someone that's just starting out kind of gets a little bit higher up. And it doesn't have to be an MMA. It could be anywhere, but it might be an MMA. I wouldn't have any problem with that either. So that's definitely something I'm interested in. And collaborations. Like, I want to do more stuff with other people. Tommy's always been such a solo sort of project. And while I've had guests on occasionally, I think it would be a lot of fun to do crossover videos with somebody else, or I don't know, just I'm sure there's a lot of different things, but I've certainly been thinking about how I might be able to expand and make things better. And of course, always on my mind, whether I'm able to successfully pull it off or not, is more content. Whether it's new and different or not, if I could make a video every single day, that would be a dream. And hopefully I'll get back to that where I'm able to do so. It's just a matter of getting it together, I guess, is really what it is. I mean, there's just so many different things going on right now, and it's it took a little bit of time to kind of get used to it, because, you know, I started with DraftKings, and then I was with Fox, and I've got the podcast. So there's all these other things that sort of, you know, I have obligations to other people, not just myself. So it's kind of like finding a way to work around those schedules and then also work back into my own sort of work groove. So yeah, I'm hoping to make a lot more content. I'm hoping to kind of diversify the content, make some new stuff, and work with other people in the community.
That's awesome. I mean, it's great to hear that there's a lot of good things coming up, and a lot of potentially new ideas. And I think you'd be great on YouTube as someone who's helping people. I think the recipe for success on YouTube is kind of the same, and the only thing that really differs is the genres and depending on what your channel is on. So I think you'd be great at that. As we let you go, Tommy, we got to ask you, what's your message for the fans listening right now who've been tuning in for the past 5 years? What do you have to say to them?
Thank you so much. I mean, you have changed my life. I mean, literally, I can't even imagine. I sometimes forget that I'm so damn lucky to do what I do every single day. But times like this, I get to reflect and look at it and just think, wow. Like I make cartoons and I wake up whenever I want to wake up, and just life is unbelievable. So to anyone that's watches since the beginning, or maybe you just started yesterday, or maybe you don't watch me at all and you're thinking about it, thank you, because without the people watching it, I wouldn't be doing this. Not the way I'm doing it now. I might have been doing it for fun, but I certainly wouldn't have the lifestyle that I have now. So eternally grateful and thank you so much.
Well, guys, Tommy Toehold has become a staple of the MMA world. Using this opportunity, we just want to remind everybody and tell everybody that we've always been massive fans, and there is no nicer person than Tommy himself in the MMA world. The guy is a class act, and it's just so good to see 5 years of awesomeness, Tommy. We're so excited and happy for you. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Tommy Toehold and check out his awesome show as well, Bushido Talk, which drops twice a week. The guy is just a machine, and a lot of big things coming up next. Tommy, again, big congratulations, and to another 5 years. Hopefully we're talking to you another 5 years' time on this podcast and talking about all the amazing things that you've done with Tommy Toehold becoming a virtual reality character that jumps out off the screen and grabs people by the throat. Who knows? Maybe we can come up with something together. But guys, again, make sure to check him out. If you haven't checked out Tommy Toehold before and you've been waiting to do it, don't wait any longer. He is awesome. Jump on and check him out. He does amazing work. And of course, we love having him on the program. He's going to be on the show a little bit later talking about UFC Brazil. So we can't wait to hear what Tommy Toehold has to say about that. Tommy, again, big congratulations and thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you guys so much. Seriously, I say this every time, and I'm dead serious. I mean it. You guys are the best. I mean, you are seriously the best in the business. Your interviews are amazing. You guys ask the most incredible questions. I always love listening to it. And seriously, all the success in the world to you guys. I hope you continue to grow. And like you said, 5 years from now, we'll be on a yacht talking about our successes together. So keep up the great work, and thank you again so much for having me on.
Shit, I hope we're on a yacht. That would be awesome. But thank you.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
All right, guys. Our next guest is one of the UFC's top welterweights who is not long removed from challenging for the welterweight title against Tyron Woodley at UFC 209, a friend of the program and one of the nicest guys in MMA, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So kind to come back on the show so soon. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going today?
Going good, my friend, and thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. And I mean, I know you've just wrapped up training, so you're super, super tired. And it's not even been 2 weeks since UFC 209. So we've got to ask you, how's life been for you and what have you been up to since the fight?
You know what? Life is always good, man. Life is always good, man. I'm fired up. Can't wait to get back out there again and do it again. Hopefully, I ended up injuring my knee in the 5th round. And so get an MRI on it Monday, and we should. Even though I'm back into training, I'm literally sitting on a Bosu ball or one of those medicine ball things and hitting the bag. So doing what I can with what I got. But you know what? Life's good, and I'm all smiles.
Wow, that's a hungry man. You've got a bit of a knee injury, and you're still training already after a fight. I feel like you're from one fight camp to another. So it's crazy that you're already training. Talk to us about this knee. What exactly happened? I know you're still waiting the results on the MRI, but how does it feel? What exactly is wrong with it?
Well, in the 5th round, he actually blitzed me in the 5th round. I ended up falling down, and as I was getting back up against the cage, he ends up smoking me with a right hand, back of the head. I ended up dropping right then. The way I dropped, though, I fell back over my right knee, kind of at an awkward angle. I don't know if you go back and watch it, but ended up falling over back of my right knee. And we believe we have an MCL tear, not ACL tear, but an MCL tear. And hopefully that's all it is. I'm pretty sure the ACL is intact, and just making sure there's no meniscus tears or anything like that. But it's sore, still a little swollen. But I'm itching the bits to get back out there and train. And this is what I do, man. I do this every day, and it's kind of hard for me just to kind of sit back and watch everybody else train. So we got guys from our gym have fights coming up, so I like to be there for them as well.
Talk to us about your gym a little bit. I mean, I know how supportive everybody is over there. What was the reception like when you got back home from the fight? How was the gym, all the kids and the parents and the people who went there? What were they like?
Man, everybody was just awesome. I mean, I get back and everybody's just still all smiles and just loving and supportive. Our school, we're a family at Upstate Karate. We got 3 generations of martial artists come through there. We got grandkids of grandparents that that took the martial arts. So it really is. It's like we're a big family. We're very close with everybody, and everybody's supportive. And can't wait till I get back out there again. And you know what? And I just got to learn. I learned from that last fight. I learned that, you can't leave it in the judge's hands. And even though a lot of people thought I won the fight, it is what it is. And I can only get better and move on from there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, how often do you think about the fight, Stephen? It's still pretty fresh, and I'm wondering how you've been dealing with the loss, because from the way you sound now, you actually sound really, really positive.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it's always been in our gym, and the people that I keep around me are very positive people, and we always look at the good things in life, and you sit there and fixate on the negative thoughts, you're going to be miserable. So even though I felt that I did enough to win the fight and it didn't happen, you can't go back and change it. You can only get better from there. And if you stay in that, if you stay, disappointed in yourself or keep beating yourself up about it, to me it doesn't fire me up. This learning experience in this last fight, I learned a lot from it. But you can only move on from there. And you gotta pick yourself back up and get back into training. So I don't like to fixate on the negative things and what I could have done or should have done. Of course, that could be a first round knockout or a 5-minute round war. There's always something that I think I could have done better. And there's a lot that I thought I could have done better and should have done during that last fight, but it didn't happen. So all I can do now is go back and train as hard as I can. So that way, when I step out there the next time, I'm not leaving it up to the judge's hands, and I'm not thinking afterwards, I should have done this, I should have done that,
I mean, have you had a chance to watch the fight since it's happened? And if so, how soon after the fight did you watch it again?
As soon as the fight was over, they had, clips and bits and pieces of it up on social media. So I immediately went back to my phone and went back and watched it. As soon as we landed back home on Monday, it was actually fairly late Sunday night. It was like 2 a.m. Monday morning. But we went to my parents' house and my coaches. We watched it, man. We went back and watched it, and we felt that we had it, but I guess we didn't have it in the judge's hand. Well, in the judge's eyes, and man, I don't know. I felt great. I think going out there, I had my right side forward. I had thrown Tyron off just a little bit because the fight before that, the first fight, I had kept my left side forward the whole time. So he just kept backing up and backing up and backing up. And I was, trying to throw feints out there to get him to come in, to get him to overcommit and me counter off of him. And it was just very difficult to get him to do that. So, but you know what, it is what it is. And hopefully we'll do it again another day.
I wanted to ask you, Stephen, obviously the fight was a really close fight up until that 5th round where he had that success and was able to drop you. I'm just curious, when you rewatched the fight, were you able to identify sort of what changed in that moment, and why do you think he was able to connect with that big right, and even though he wasn't able to earlier in that fight?
Well, I think he just kind of caught me off guard. I didn't expect him to blitz. And I think I was kicking. I was getting him to throw a kick. And as I lifted my leg up, I think that's when he blitzed, and he just kind of as I was getting back up is when he hit me, and I ended up falling over my knee. That's what dropped me in the 5th round. Kind of made me see stars, and it was a punch to the back of the noggin that did it. But that was the punch that actually hurt. When he blitzed me, I just kind of fell, and as soon as I popped back up, that's when I got hit. And I think it was because he caught me in the middle of throwing a kick, so I was off balance.
I mean, obviously the fight decision was debated amongst fans and critics, but a great deal of people had it scored for you, including Dana White, who said it publicly that he felt you won the fight. Does a part of you feel like you should be wearing the belt right now?
There's always, I still get that feeling. I dream about that belt, man. And I'm not going to, I know I can be welterweight champion, and I'm going to get out there and beat whoever I need to beat to get back up to that spot where I can fight for that title again. But yeah, man, I thought I had it, but like there again, like I said, when you're fighting, you can't leave it up to the judges, and I did, and that was on me.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting situation. Have you spoken to Dana at all since the fight? Has he said anything to you? Have you had a chance to speak with him?
Right after the fight, I looked at the doctor, had him check out my knee. I caught Dana in the hallway, and he was like, "Hey, man, I thought you had it. I gave you 3 and Tyron 2, but and he reinsured. kind of what I was saying about not leaving it in the judge's hands. But yeah, he thought I had it, and so did a bunch of other people. But hey, man, you got to go out there and leave it all out, and I didn't do that. There was a lot of, but on the flip side of that, I'm facing the welterweight champion and a very strong opponent, just physically strong, and I can kind of hear his coaches, looking to get me up against the cage, looking to get me down. So I didn't want to overcommit on anything. So if I wanted to strike, I wanted him to come in to where, he was overextended, and it would be easier for me to counter him. There was a few times I blitzed, but when I did blitz, I can feel, him looking for the legs. I knew he did that a few times in the first round, so I didn't want to overcommit on my strikes. I was kind of waiting on him, and I believe he was waiting on me, but, I felt like I had the octagon control, had him backing up pretty much the entire time. But yeah, I can always go back and work on something.
I know, obviously, you're focused on the future and improving. I'm wondering, even though it didn't go your way, given how the first two fights played out, do you still feel like you can beat Tyron if the two of you meet in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel I can go out there, and I know I can beat him. Just in the last two fights, I know if I just put forth a little bit more effort, actually, go out there and just do what I know I can do. Just fight, I know I can beat him. I know I can do it. And the fans do too. And, and I just got to be, of course, you're out there being cautious, but sometimes you got to grit your teeth, bite down on that mouthpiece and go. And I didn't do that in this fight. And that's something that I know if I go out there and do that, I'll end up winning. But, the fight happened twice, and I fight whoever I got to fight next, and I get back to that fight again, and we'll do it again.
Let's talk about some of that criticism for the fight. I mean, a lot of people didn't really like the fight. I guess a lot of people sort of expected something different. Some fans were a bit critical. Dana was a little bit critical. Does that change anything for you as a fighter, how you approach fights? Or is it a situation where you can't really put yourself at risk all the time, and it just depends on the matchup and what happens on the night?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, perfectly. Of course, a lot of these guys they're fans, and they go out there and they want, we go out there to put on a show, and that fight was very hesitant, and a lot of martial artists thought it was a good fight, just kind of a chess match, and just the anticipation of the whole thing, because you didn't know really what was going to happen, who was going to blitz forward. But you got to think out there, for me, I'm facing off a very powerful guy who could drop you, knock you out with one punch. So, you got to be very cautious going out there facing off against somebody like that. And a guy strong enough that could, he could hold you down an entire round if he wanted to. He's a powerful guy. And so you got to be hesitant out there, and you can't put yourself in those kind of situations. And, taking shots from him is not a good thing, especially in the long run. Even after your career, taking shots from him is not a good thing. So, all that's kind of, going through your head when you're out there.
I mean, you mentioned to us last time how he had the strength of a 205-pounder. I'm wondering, you're obviously going to go back to the drawing board and work your way back up the ladder. But do you think it puts you in a little bit of an awkward position where, as long as Tyron is the champion, given the way that, Dana spoke about the fight and the way it was received, they may be a little bit hesitant to give you another title shot and do another rematch?
Could possibly. That could possibly be the case. But when I go out there and face his next opponent, whoever my next opponent is, I'm going to finish him. I'm going out there to finish him. And, of course, I've said in the past, you can't go out there looking for it. But you know what? I want to be able to put myself out there to where it's going to happen, So, I just got to be exciting. I know I can go out there, and I know I can defeat the top guys in the division. I just got to go out there and do it to put myself, to prove to the UFC, hey, this guy's an exciting fighter. He puts people away. Let's give him another shot.
And how important is it for you to one day get a rematch against Tyron somewhere down the line and sort of avenge that loss? Is it something that will bother you and sort of stay with you if you become champion and finish your career before getting the chance to fight him again?
You know what? Yeah, that loss will always be there. Kind of like the same one with Matt Brown. I still think about sometimes fighting Matt Brown again, but I've passed him. I've got bigger and better things I'm looking forward to. And same thing with Tyron. As long as he's got the belt, that's the guy I'm thinking about. That's the guy that I want to step out there and and fight because I want that belt. So yeah, man, it doesn't matter who I face off against next. That's the guy that I'm focused on, is getting that belt.
There was a lot of words exchanged between you and Tyron. It was a pretty storied rivalry leading up into both fights, and we saw at UFC 205, afterwards, you guys, after the press conferences, not that anybody saw, but you guys shook hands, you spoke a couple of words to each other. I'm just wondering if you got the chance to do that after this fight, and if there was any beef squash, or if you had a sort of similar interaction afterwards, and got a chance to exchange words.
You know what? I really didn't have a chance to see him after the fight. I did see his sister and some of his coaches, and we kind of, shook hands, and it was all good, man. Those guys are, they were, saying, hey, man, you'll get your shot. You're a top welterweight. You'll get out there and do it again. We'll fight again. So, didn't have a chance to talk with him though, but he seemed to be, I got a lot of respect. I know he's got more respect for me as well, and especially after the fight. And we just went 10 rounds with each other. So, but you know what? I'm beef with him, man. He's the champion, and but hey, we're gonna do it again. And that's like you said, that's the guy I'm focused on. That's the guy I want to fight. So whoever's next, man, you better watch out.
I mean, I know you said that you're waiting to see what happens with your knee. Some fans were a little bit worried about that big shot that you took in the 5th round. How's everything going after that shot? I mean, have you been checked out? Are you clear to fight again? Was there any damage done from that shot?
You know what? I don't know. There was no permanent damage or anything. I probably had a little light concussion, but it was fine, man. I slept well that night. The next day, my head was good. The back of my head was a little sore where it made contact. But other than that, man, I was good to go. Back into training, not taking any damage. I do want to take some time off of taking shots because, I took some heavy shots to the first fight with Tyron. Took a big shot at time, but just make sure everything's right and work on my cardio, work on things I need to work on, but keep it light with the contact just to make sure everything's set. But I'm feeling fine, man. I'm thinking straight. It seems like everything's working right. So, yeah, man, we can't wait to get back out there and do it again.
Yeah, I mean, you sound hungry. You're already training. You're obviously waiting on what happens with this MCL or your knee. What do you think the rough timeline is like? In an ideal world, when would you like to get back in there and fight another opponent?
I would like to get out there and fight, next month if I could. But,
wow.
With the knee, though, and not really sure what's going on with that. My coaches wanted me to take some time off after taking big shots from Tyron. And so we'll see. Hopefully maybe July or August is the plan. So just, right now I'm focused on things I need to work on, things I need to go back and get with my coaches. And there's a lot of things during that fight we can go back and work on, my reaction time, putting combinations together, my wrestling defense. Obviously, he ended up getting me down in that 3rd round, but I thought I did fairly well getting back up. But there's always something I can go back and work on. That's what I want to be better. I've been at the top of the game. A lot of guys who make it to where I was and not get that title, they just kind of fall to the wayside, And man, I want to improve. I want to get better every day and go for that title again. That's my goal, and I'm not going to give up on it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, looking at what's next for you, there's a few names in the division that kind of stand out. Guys like Robbie Lawler, perhaps, or a fight with Nick Diaz, if that could come together. Is there anyone in the division that you sort of look at as your potential next opponent?
Man, those two names would be awesome. I mean, you got Robbie Lawler, you got Carlos Condit, you got the Diaz. Any one of those guys would be awesome, man. So right now, top 5 guys, I'm down. I'm down to go out there and put it all on the line, man. So those are top opponents, and that's why I'm in this sport to fight the best guys in the world. I mean, to go back after my career years down the road. I'm talking to my grandkids and let them know, I was one of the top athletes, or the welterweight champion is what I want to say, and just let them know, hey, I faced the toughest guys in the world, toughest warriors in the world, and was right there with him, man. And That's why I do it, man. It's awesome just to fight those guys. It's an honor and definitely a privilege to be able to go out there and face off against some of the best fighters, best athletes in the world.
Absolutely. And obviously the belt is that end goal for you. That's something that you're looking to go out there and prove that you are the best. You know, that first road to the title shot, it was a pretty long one, longer than maybe some people or even yourself, cared. But obviously you're fighting the top guys, so I guess it's part of your plan. But what do you think your next road to the title is going to be like? Do you think you can get one more win and get another title shot? Do you think it's going to take a couple of wins? Are you at least hoping that it's going to be a lot shorter than your previous road?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely hoping that it's going to be a lot shorter, not 7 fights, but maybe 2 or 3, 3 at the most. If I go out there and prove to the UFC and the fans that I can finish these top guys, we'll get that. I believe we'll get that shot.
Let's quickly talk about a friend of yours who looked like he was going to make his way back to the division and come back to welterweight. He is fighting Michael Bisping in middleweight at the moment, but he did mention recently how he has no interest in facing you because you're friends. However, with Tyron as the champ, it does seem like it would increase the chances of him coming back to welterweight and facing him for the title. Is that a concern to you at all? And have you spoken to him at all about it recently?
You know what? I haven't talked to him recently, especially after the fight. Before the fight, we talk to each other, and that's just something that we both don't want to do. We've got no interest in facing off against each other, and especially a guy who inspired me to switch from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. I mean, he was the guy to do it. But with Tyron winning, he may come back and face off against him, depending on how everything goes with Bisping, and. But still, even though let's say he does get that title, I got a few fights before I fight for that title again. But yeah, man, we both agree that we have no interest in facing off against each other. I'm definitely a support guy for him, and would love to get some training in with him too for his next fights and my fight. So that's the plan.
And just on that fight, how do you think it goes down? A lot of people sort of not sure if Bisping could pull it off or if GSP would become the new middleweight champion.
Well, I mean, they both have got some things to watch out for. I mean, the only thing that Bisping has on him is, the time he's had off. George has had off, but this guy's a lifelong martial artist. He's always training. Even after he retired, he was still training every day with his guys, still sparring, still wrestling, still doing his jiu-jitsu. So that guy's, even though he hasn't been fighting, he's still evolving, still keeping up with the times and the style. I think Bisping's going to have his hands full, even though I believe he is a bigger guy. But George has definitely got the experience. He knows he fights big guys all the time, and in the gym. So I think Bisping's going to be surprised.
It's going to be an interesting fight. But looking at you and your journey, I mean, you've told us in the past how your goal in this sport is to be the best and set an example to your students. Do you feel that in some ways, the way things have played out and the journey that you've taken might end up sort of speaking even louder to your point about being a martial artist and overcoming adversity, in the sense that, even though you didn't win the belt initially, if you do end up holding the title in the future, it may send a stronger message about, never giving up to your students and the people that you want to inspire?
Definitely, man. And it's crazy how much positive feedback that I've got from people that I don't even know has told me, even though we thought you won the fight, you're an inspiration to me, the way you took it, you're a gentleman and something the sport needs and things like that. That right there is man, no words can really describe the way I feel. That's the message that ultimately I want to put out there, is that you could do this sport. You can be the best guys in the division and still be a gentleman as well. And for my students at the school, that's something that I preach about every day, is showing indomitable spirit, showing perseverance. And what better way than right now, after a loss, you get back in the gym, you train hard, and you don't give up on it. I mean, even in the society today, quitting is like the thing. I mean, you get kids out there that start something, next thing it gets a little rough, they start quitting. And when they look back in life, as they get older, they're going to realize, hey, I've never accomplished anything, because, when you quit once, it gets easier. So that's something that I preach to our students all the time, man, is you got a goal, and there's going to be obstacles in your way to prevent you from going to that, getting that goal, and you gotta push through it, man. And how much satisfaction you will get once you've accomplished that, and that right there just solidifies everything that I've been talking about. You never give up.
Well, as we let you go, Stephen, I mean, everybody's excited to see what's next. We can't wait to see you come back in that octagon and have your next fight. So to all those fans out there, to all those Wonderboy fans out there that are listening to the interview right now, what's your message to them? What would you like to say to them?
I just want to tell them that I will be back. I will be a better fighter, and I will not disappoint. I will get that title. And I just appreciate everything that all their support and everything that they, supporting me and all the love that they showed me, man. And I'm going to give that back through putting on awesome performance out there in the octagon.
Well, there you go, guys. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Wonderboy MMA. A lot of good things coming. And, Stephen, we enjoyed your first road to the title. We enjoyed the last two title fights. And even though you didn't get it in the last one, we will definitely enjoy seeing you work your way back up the ladder and no doubt working your way up to another title shot. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it as always. And we can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thanks, guys. Y'all, definitely a pleasure. And you guys have a good one.
Hey, this is Tony Okagui Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the Nintendo Switch shortage of mixed martial arts, Tommy Toehold, and UFC Fortaleza was last weekend. As with every card, there is always something to be learned, and Fortaleza taught us three very important things. One, Edson Barbosa could knock out a rhino with his flying knee. That was the most devastating and horrifyingly precise knockout I have ever seen. I'm not kidding, I don't care what kind of animal you put in front of him. If he lands that knee like he landed it on Saturday night, that thing is going to sleep. A bear, a crocodile, a giraffe, a shark. Can sharks be knocked out? It doesn't matter. Edson Barbosa can KO them with his flying knee of death. We also learned that time catches up with everybody, other than Shogun Rua, apparently. Shogun, despite having fought for 15 years now, can still string together 3 wins in a row, even though he's built like your dad. Speaking of dad builds, time has certainly caught up with Vitor, or at least the lack of testosterone has. But then again, he's fought some pretty fucking tough guys. So maybe Shogun's just better at picking his fights lately. Dad bod Dan Kelly just defeated Rashad Evans, and Rashad looked like he was cut from marble. So maybe what we really learned here is that you can't judge a book by its dad bod. And the final thing that we learned is that when you cut Joe Soto, he bleeds like he was directed by Quentin Tarantino. After that bout, the cage looked like a Saw movie had just wrapped. That was full-on Brad Pitt in Fight Club. You don't know where I've been, Lou. I know cuts to the head cause a considerable amount of bleeding, but I'm pretty sure based on the canvas afterwards, Joe Soto either has more blood in him than the average person, or he is some sort of alien being who is pretending he's human, and he thinks that's how much humans bleed. Either way, that was a lot of fucking blood. And that's what we learned from UFC Fortaleza. Thank you for having me on, guys, and thank you for the kind words about the 5-year anniversary. I apologize for my creator not being able to give you a single impression. What a fucking goof. Thanks again, guys. Keep kicking ass.
This is Don Fry, and you're listening to Submission Radio. You touch that dial and I'll kill you.
Alright guys, our next guests are joining us here to talk about an awesome road trip they capped off last month. The FloCombat road trip spanned 12 days and delivered a bunch of classic moments. It is a pleasure to welcome Duane Finley and a man making his SR debut appearance, Hunter Homistek to Submission Radio. Boys, welcome. It's been a long time. How you going?
It's good, man. You know, I'm usually, I feel like I'm the most handsome guy in any situation, but now I'm like third tier. Like you fuckers got me, so good to be here.
Yeah, man, it's seriously a pleasure to be here. You guys are usually just liking my meat pictures on Instagram, so it's a pleasure to actually be here this time. And that's my food.
That sounds all kind of erotic.
Let me clarify that. It's my grilled meats. But yeah, it's a pleasure to finally jam with you guys.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a secret, Hunter. You've ruined the secret, but that's okay. I mean, people can know about it. And there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to talk about. Quickly, Hunter, we know Duane is known for his awesome road trips, but how did you get involved, and did it end up being what you expected?
Oh, yeah. Well, it actually started back when we were both working at Bleacher Report. I was still a college student at the time, and Duane was doing an East Coast run. So he hit me up. He knew I was in Pittsburgh, kind of dug my writing style a little bit and wanted to kind of take me under his wing. And that's when the whole mentor-protege relationship we have going on kind of kicked off then. This was 2014, I want to say. So it started back then. We went camping with Jim and Dan Miller and their father, Mike. we went up to Cerro Longo and just kind of did a East Coast run there. And then when we both get at FloCombat, you know, we kind of have free range to do our own things and to pick our own projects. And I was just like, man, that road trip was killer. But with how social media kind of has revved up with all the live, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, Snapchat, all these new features that we have to interact with fans, I just think it could be really cool again. So we pitched it to our bosses, and they were totally open to it from day one, man. They were like, that sounds awesome. We totally see how this is going to work. We trust your vision. Just go do what you want. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it went. It was cool to have such support all the way around, but we just rocked it, man.
Duane, I mean, you get a young hunter joining you on the trip. Now he's an experienced man with a lot of skills. Tell us, has he lived up to your expectations as a road trip buddy?
Oh yeah, there's no way this kid could disappoint me ever. I mean, like as he said, we kind of started out. You know, I just saw something good in him, man. Like he had a good writing talent, but more importantly than that, he was hungry, and that's what it takes in this game, as you guys very well know. You know, you can sit back and do fight announcements, or you can do whatever. You can get out there and get the real damn story, and that's what it's about. So that takes effort. He was willing to put that in. And then this time around, yeah, he got the crotchety old man. He got old Bo to get off my ass and get out there and do the trip. And it was great, man. Like, here's the thing is Hunter and I have we've been close friends for a few years now, but I can't even like say my own family I can tolerate for 12 straight days and not have a single complaint about. And yeah, man, we're like an old married couple on the road. It's fantastic, but it's a lot of fun, and you know, it's not just this MMA thing, man, because you know, you're making memories along the way. Like, it was the first time Hunter had seen the Southwest. I mean, his ginger skin, you know, can't take that Arizona sun. So it was fun. It was fun to see him out in a different element, and to know that I had a big part in helping him make those memories. You know,
It's good that you showed his ginger skin a good time, and I think that when a guy like Hunter barbecues as well as he does, you can always tolerate anything. I mean, we could spend endless times with anyone that barbecues that well. So let's talk about this trip, because one of the things that really stood out was the time you spent with Cub Swanson. I think a lot of people saw what happened there, but you know, for those that didn't, or that didn't see it or read it, tell us about the experience.
Well, it's funny because Cub and I go way back. You know, I've been telling his story for a while, and how we kind of got that connection is, man, I remember looking down and seeing he had just beat Ross Pearson in Atlantic City, and there was nobody that even cared to talk to him. And I'm like, this guy's got something special that nobody's picking up on. So I started talking to him and doing that, and then we grew a bond together. And then when it came to the first road trip, he was open arms, and I went out there and spent some time with him there. So when it came time to the second road trip, we kind of called him we had a few road trip OGs in there that jumped in from the first time to the second time, and yeah. So it was Hunter's first, and I told him, and Hunter, you can back me up on this, because Hunter didn't really, he wasn't, I don't want to say like a Cub Swanson fan, so to speak. He dug his fighting style, didn't know much about his personality. But I said, dude, when you leave here, you will have an absolute man crush on Cubby Swanson. He's like, yeah, I don't think so. We weren't even pulled out of his driveway. He's like, I fucking love Cub Swanson. I'm like, yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And now, I mean, I got posters all over my walls of Cub Swanson now. If somebody comes in, they're going to think I'm like the Cub Swanson serial killer or something with all these pictures I have hanging up. But no, man, seriously, because Cub was one of those guys, just like Duane said, everybody loved his fighting style. You know, when it came fight night, nobody had any doubts that Cub Swanson was going to deliver. But outside of the cage, he was a guy that, like, I feel like not only did I know nothing about, what I did know about him was kind of bland, because you only ever see him in those press conference situations, or those media day situations. So to get him out of that element and into his own element and kind of probe his mind there was amazing. I remember one night super well, we were there. We had just got back from bowling, and we had been drinking a little. We were all loose and having a good time. Duane went off to write something, and it was just me and Cub in the kitchen, and he busted out his iPad and started like going through his old fights and just breaking down moments that, I saw this in that moment, and that's why I countered with this, or that's why this worked. And he was just like going through his old fights, and to hear him break it down, like his analytical mind, dudes, like you wouldn't expect it, but he's ready for the Fox desk, man. Like, it's right up there with Dominic Cruz on the levels of, I'm not a fighter by any means. I've never taken, fight classes or lessons or anything. And it made sense to me. So for him to break it down on that level, it was just amazing to hear him riff like that.
Fellas, I also heard a bit of a rumor that there was possibly a bit of sparring going on with Cub. I just want to know what possessed you guys to do that, and how long did it take to revive one of you that decided to do that?
Well, hey, I'll say this. Hunter and I were sitting at, we went to lunch with one of Cubby's up-and-comers, and our next stop was, we were eventually going to get to, as you saw on the trip, we got to Phoenix with Brian Bader. And we were talking about, like, because Hunter had never seen him in person either. And I'm like, dude, that is a mountain of a man, like Bader's, a massive human being. So Hunter was joking about, like I said, maybe you should spar him. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then we got to joke, and he's like, well, we're here with Cub. You think Cub would do it? And then go ahead, Hunter. Like, I'll let you go ahead and talk about this because it's your liver that's still out there.
So I was going to say, I'm only just today actually pissing clear again. So that's good. Finally. But it was funny because at the time, Duane, as you know, had done kind of these road trips in the past, and he had spent time in Indiana, and he had borrowed a GoPro camera for his head and sparred Matt Mitrione and Chris Lytle with the GoPro on his head. So I was like, that'd be pretty cool to spar Cub that way. Like I just said a minute ago, I'm not a fighter by any means. I've never even been in a street fight up to this point, literally, super easy upbringing. Exactly. Huge pussy. So they're like, you want to spar Cub? And I'm thinking off the top of my head, I just spent a night. I don't remember if we were there a night or 2 nights with Cub, but he's just like a total sweetheart. I'm like, yeah, he's not going to hurt me. Like, yeah, I'll spar Cub. And then as soon as I said yes, both Duane and the fighter we were with that lives with Cub, Troy, they both got super serious and like, do you really want to do that? And I was so all about it at first, but then I saw their reactions and I was like, shit, did I just agree to something that I shouldn't have agreed to? So it was written though. What am I going to do? Back out after saying yes? I mean, then after that, it had to happen. So we did.
Well, and let me clarify something. So that urgency you saw on my face, because I don't know if I ever told you this, but when you were putting on the gloves, Cub come up to me and Cub goes, should I just knock him out? And I'm like, no, don't knock him out. Like, don't just go ahead, go for the body a little bit. And then he was still barbaric there, man. That's why the worry is because if you were gonna play pickup ball, you're like, hey man, we're gonna shoot a game of horse with Michael Jordan. He'd still be kind of, I'm not saying Cubby's Mike, but I'm just saying the competitive spirit there. But if you start going at him, then Mike's gonna come at you. I mean, so. Like, I didn't want Hunter, drifting out into traffic and then, Killer Cub getting him.
Well, I mean, we've seen the footage, and it was the GoPro idea. Obviously, it's not the first time it's been done, but it was a really good one in this case because you see Hunter, you see it from his perspective, and you're sort of going at him, and then all of a sudden, bam, everything's just horizontal. So, talk to us about that moment. What was that? The body punch? Did he get you in the head? What is it? You have to describe, if you can put into words, Hunter. What is it like being hit by Cub Swanson, and what exactly did he do to your liver?
Oh man, it was all body shots. Like that's what I told Duane after. A situation's bad when you're like begging Cub Swanson to punch you in the face. Like I was so done with the body shots. I'm like, please hit me in the head instead. I'm like 6'3". Like I have a pretty big height advantage on Cub. So I thought I'd be able to keep him at distance to a degree with my jab, but I was very Stefan Struve-like in my use of distance. Did not work one bit. He just went to my body, and by the end, I was his height because I was doubled over in pain. He had me chopped down to his level by the end. But, dude, it was just body shot after body shot after body shot. And it got worse because it was total that Killer Cub instinct. Once he saw that I hated the body shots, just kept going for him. And I was like, oh, man, please punch me in the face. Like, I'd much rather get hit in the head. As far as you said, describing the pain, man, I don't even know how to describe it. It's nothing like I've ever felt before. The closest is like getting the wind knocked out of you when you're playing football or whatever. You hit the ground hard, can't breathe for a second. It's as terrible as you expect.
Wow, what a moment. Let's jump over to your stop over at Alliance in San Diego. You spent some time with the likes of Dominic Cruz, Kat Zingano, Phil Davis, and others. Boys, talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, I'll go first, Hunter, I suppose. But Alliance, we have to tell you that on a road trip like that, there's dog days because we're not flying from place to place. We're putting in these hard miles, and then you're stopping. And the thing to remember, guys, is all of these guys came out and did this on their own. Like, nobody made these guys come out and do these interviews. They did it because they wanted to be a part of this. And in no place did we get like a bigger revival, like spiritual revival than Alliance, because, you know, Phil Davis, Dominic Cruz, Kavanagh, they all showed up and they were in great moods and they were excited to do it. So, you know, because you guys interview people for a living too. So, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, you know, you don't want to go through the motions. This was absolutely not that. These guys were fired up. They made us excited. They created a great environment for us. And yeah, they were actually boom, boom, boom. Like, I think a handful of probably the best interviews we got on that trip. It was pretty amazing stuff from top to bottom.
That's amazing. And Alliance has always been sort of a fascinating gym, especially when you got great minds like Eric Del Fierro and Dominic Cruz. And you hear a lot about the other camps, you know, like the AKA and Jackson Winklejohns and, you know, American Top Team, and they're all fantastic. But I feel like you hear less about Alliance, and not many people really get to see, you know, into what the actual team dynamic in that team is like. Tell us, what was the vibe like, other than obviously the good moods and spirits that they showed you? What's the relationship like between the fighters?
Yeah, from my perspective, I thought it was really cool to see because they were all super friendly. You know, outside when they were not sparring or doing drills together, they were still joking with each other, talking to each other, really friendly and upbeat, positive kind of vibes in that gym, which was, like Duane said, that's exactly what we needed. And I told him after we left, like that stop, it was only day 2. But we had done a 12-hour drive to get there from Albuquerque to San Diego. It's like we drove through the night. We had no sleep virtually. You know, we were dead tired. And this was day 2. You know, in my head, I'm like, man, still got 10 days left of this. Like, we can't get this far behind on sleep. So I was feeling pretty down, to be honest. But then, like, leaving Alliance, I told him, it was like he said, a spiritual awakening. Like, it was so refreshing being in that environment. And it was because of those vibes in the gym, man. Super, super positive. You know, Kat Zingano was there. And I think if you watch Duane's interview with Kat Zingano, I don't know that I've ever seen her so happy, so joyous, so lighthearted in an interview. And just it was awesome to see her like that. But that was the mood. Like, if you watch the Zingano interview, that was kind of the mood of the whole gym, just really uplifting.
Wow, yeah, it sounds like a great, great time. I mean, you guys mentioned Ryan Bader before, so we want to find out how that experience was. We've known Bader for a little bit of time now. He's always a great guy. We've got a couple of fun Bader stories ourselves, but what was it like going up there and visiting that man mountain in his gym over there?
Well, the funny thing is, like I said about road trip OGs, you know, Bader is one of them, and you know, and Bader's one of the guys. There was a couple of segments that were a little longer. We called it a Real Talk with Bo, where we just sat down and talked for, you know, 25, 30 minutes. You know, we had Diego Sanchez one, Benson Henderson, but Bader was, you know, super interesting because of the situation he's in, and, you know, and not to kind of bring back Alliance, but it was the same thing with Phil Davis. There was something different, and Hunter and I noticed it's like, man, these guys look happy. Like, most of the times when we see them that they're in the, you know, the UFC grind, you know, both of these guys were actually happy and loose, and it's because that they're fighting for the money now, you know, assuming that Bader does go to Bellator, that he's going to get the money that he wanted, you know, and Davis got the money that he wanted. So, yeah, Bader, you know, and that was his whole purpose. He came into power, opened it up for us, and just sat and kicked it. And yeah, man, he was funny and engaging, always helpful, and yeah, man, just I'm so happy to see him getting where he wants to be.
That's amazing. It's great to see guys like that, like Ryan Bader, who is such a nice guy who deserves good things, to see him in such a good headspace. There's a funny story about involving Dennis and Ryan Bader and Ryan Bader's phone, but I feel like that's for another time. We can't not talk about the great interview with Diego Sanchez that you had, Duane. Obviously, your relationship with him was a big factor in it being so good. Would you rank that as one of your favorite interviews that you've ever done?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a top fiver. But I got to tell you, the way it came about was what made it even crazier. Is because Diego is such a standoffish guy. I mean, like, he came up and he's like, yeah, D's my boy and all these things, and we've done some good stuff together. But I'm by far closer to a lot of other fighters. But Diego's kind of a guy who's kind of goes his own way. So Hunter and I we didn't even approach Diego. He just came up to us and he's like, hey, man, I dig what you're doing. I'm glad you guys are here. He's like, let's rock and roll. Let's do an interview. And I said, okay, Diego, let's go. He goes, oh, no, not today. Let's do it tomorrow. And I said, okay, we'll do it tomorrow. And then he's texting me, telling me how epic this thing's going to be. And holy shit, was it ever. I mean, like you know how you guys know, like, in our business, most of the time we edit videos or we chop it up, make them clean. Hunter and I, after that conversation, I'm like, let's just put the whole thing out there. Like, don't edit it, nothing. Just put the whole 30 minutes out there, full Diego crazy. Let that passion go through. But yeah, absolutely top fiver. And yeah, that was that, as Hunter said, we had a 12-hour drive to San Diego. So the Diego interview catapulted us onto the road, gave us the energy to get through the first 8 hours, and then San Diego backed us up.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the funnest interviews that I've ever seen with Diego. So great stuff, Duane. Hunter, in terms of the trip, is there anything else or any other stories from the road that stand out to you that you can sort of share with us?
Oh, man. Stories from the road. Let's see. Man, for me, it's actually funny, man, you say that, stories from the road. Duane and I are two guys who are known to enjoy a cold beverage from time to time. And actually, this trip, it was so damn busy, dudes, that we honestly didn't have time to drink like we normally would have. Like, there was no carrying on. It was such a business trip in every sense. When you're jutting around from town to town, city to city, and blasting through the desert in the night, there's not a lot of time for that fun. But I will say, on a personal note, Duane taking me under his wing has given me the opportunity to kind of see these people up close that I've idolized. I started as a fan. I wasn't a journalist because I thought I had some great truth to bring to the masses in the MMA world. I just liked MMA, and I was like, yeah, I could talk to these guys, So Matt Brown had been one of my favorite fighters forever. I mean, one of the guys that just, if he's fighting, everybody wants to watch Matt Brown fight, right? But even out of the cage, I like Matt Brown as a dude. He's a Pantera fan. He's a heavy metal fan. It's everything I like, except he's a Bengals fan, which is a little sketchy. So maybe talk about that. But we met Matt Brown in Las Vegas at a restaurant, and just to have dinner with Matt Brown, we did do an interview with him. And it was fantastic. You can see that too on FloCombat. But it was everything around the interview that just made it for me. Just seeing Matt Brown in his element, that opportunity, man. Duane said it 1,000 times on the trip, but to get the fighters in their element is so huge. As you guys have interviewed tons of fighters, thousands of fighters. You know what it's like to be at a media day when they're expecting certain question, when they're coached to say certain things. When you get them out of that element, in their own element, totally relaxed, it's a totally different dynamic, man. So just hanging out with Matt Brown, was an all-timer for me, just on a personal level. I'd definitely put that one up there.
Hunter, I'm curious. I mean, the bigger question for me is, did you lose any more jackets on this trip? Or did you bring extra jackets just in case there were jackets lost along the way?
Thankfully didn't lose any jackets, but thanks to Albuquerque's weather, man, it was 60 degrees and nice when we got there, and we woke up and there were 6 inches of snow. So it was like the most bipolar weather ever. So thankfully I did bring my jacket that my girlfriend bought me after New York to replace the stolen one. So I did. I had a backup jacket this time, came prepared.
Only thing lost was some dignity, brothers. But I do want to I do want to add, and this was kind of, and I think this was neat for Hunter to see too, because as he said on the process, these guys came out on their own. So one guy who was not featured on any interviews or anything such on the trip was Carlos Condit, but that was a big part for me because of my history and all the stuff that we've done together. We've formed a really close friendship, and we popped in when we were in Albuquerque. We popped into Elevate to the strength and conditioning place, and Adrian, the guy who runs it, goes, "Hey, Duane, somebody knew you were coming and wants to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh, well, who could that be?" I look back, and it's Condit. And Hunter got to meet him and talk with him a little bit. And then the next morning, right before the Diego Sanchez interview, actually, we went out and had coffee. Got to sit down with Carlos and catch up with him. All that stuff, it wasn't MMA on record or anything like that. Because on this trip, we'd be like, "Oh, that's a big name. Everybody would love to hear from Carlos." I know they would. But that's the relationship's different. So it was nice to have that dynamic, to know that there's things that have become worthwhile in this business. These things, as Hunter and I are going along, I keep referring to him like, "Hey man, you're gonna find your Condit someday. A guy that's so fascinating to you that you'll dive in and spend 6-7 weeks in the desert with him, and try to figure out what makes him great or what makes him tick, like I did when I did that project for Junkie." And then so to have kind of the most important cog in this thing for me to be something that never even got to the public eye, was something interesting. And then, I know Hunter learned from it,
And it's interesting that you mentioned Carlos Condit, because I've always associated your work, Duane, with Carlos Condit and vice versa. Not to say you're like the Carlos Condit guy, but like the most interesting interviews I've ever read about Carlos and, with Carlos in them have been your work. I'm just wondering, a lot of people are sort of wondering, where he is in his headspace. You got a chance to sit down with him for a while.
Sure.
Just before we let you go, what was your takeaway, when you walked away from that conversation? I mean, not to say that I'm trying to get a scoop here, but what do you think is where do you think the future lies in Carlos Condit's future?
I think it's definite time away, hiatus wise. I'm not saying he'll never be back. I think right now he's just enjoying life, without the fight. I think after the Lawler fight, that was a banger, and that was one that we'll always remember. Damian Maia, how things went there. He wasn't happy at all with it. But I also think too, he's very aware of the wars he's been in and the damage he's taken. Him and his wife just had their second child, so he's got some real life on his mind, and I think he's just enjoying the quiet and the calm right now. If I had to guess, I'd say probably 50-50. He's a competitor and a fighter, so maybe. But I can tell you this: the only thing I can tell you for sure is he's doing well. He's happy, and I think no matter what he does, he'll be great at.
Well, what a road trip. What a time you guys had. It's absolutely amazing. Now, before we let you go, I just want to quickly let everybody know, FloCombat, you guys do amazing work on there. We're big supporters of you, obviously, and we love the stuff that you do. But for the few people that still haven't been on FloCombat, can you sort of give us a little bit of a preview on what's coming up? What's some stuff that they can look forward to in the next couple of weeks?
All right, Glow, get them.
Oh man, send it over to me. I mean, I've kind of been an advocate of this hashtag MMA for the people since we started FloCombat. We just want to bring the real stories to you guys, and we have a ton of features coming up. We're going super interview feature heavy because we look around at other sites. As you guys know, MMA world's a very small bubble. There's only so much content you're going to see going out. So we're going super interview feature heavy. We want to just continue to shed light on the fighters. And at FloCombat, man, we always have our own events too, which I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on, because I'll be the first person to admit these aren't UFC level fights by any means. But as far as pure entertainment goes, Duane will totally back me up on this. It's hard to beat the events on FloCombat for pure entertainment, man. I mean, if you want rock'em sock'em, hashtag just bleed kind of fights, we got those. We got those, man, all over the place. So for FloCombat, we have a stacked card coming up this weekend in particular, March 18th. We have 2 events that are going to be amazing, and that also transcend kind of the just bleed, because we have a guy, Dylan Kalla, trains at the MMA lab periodically. He's a UFC prospect, man, through and through. If you want to see the next generation, I think Dylan Kalla is a guy that to keep an eye on. He's fighting on FloCombat. So that's cool to kind of help launch these guys' careers for sure.
Yeah, man, it's neat, man. Like Hunter said, and I'll be short on it.
Sure.
Like with our events, it's not UFC caliber just yet. So what better than to get like a couple 12 packs, some wings, and just watch people just beat the shit out of each other. But it's also, then there's like with Kalla and Damir Hatmagovic is fighting too. Those guys are both one fight away. So it's cool to watch prospects coming up. But I will say we do have an exclusive with the one and only Mackenzie Dern coming up this week. So get ready. So some interesting stuff coming there. So keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, I can imagine that's going to be a lot of fun. And as you guys mentioned, there are so many reasons to check out FloCombat. I mean, there's the actual video content, and then there's the great stuff that you guys do with your road trips, and the coverage and all the video content that comes with that. So congratulations on that, guys. Make sure to visit FloCombat.com and follow the guys on Twitter at Duane Finley MMA and at Hunter A Homistek. It's been a pleasure having you guys on the program, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys, man. It's a true pleasure.
Thank you, boys.
Hey guys, this is Brian Stan. You're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Well, this is a special treat. Our next guest is one of New York's favorite people. He is also a former UFC middleweight champion, a multiple-time Division I NCAA wrestler. He has most recently added actor to his resume when he starred alongside Kevin James in Barcelona, and he's now facing Gegard Mousasi at UFC 210 on April 8th. We wanted this man on for a long time, and now today, here he is, Chris Weidman. Welcome to your first appearance on Submission Radio. How's it going today?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's absolutely our pleasure. Now, before we talk fighting, Chris, we see you've recently joined Twitch, and you've got your own channel, you're streaming, and you've actually been playing a bit of Counter-Strike. Now, we had no idea that you were such a big gamer. We saw on your computer you had games like Rainbow Six and StarCraft. New things we learned about you. How long have you been gaming for? What made you want to start a Twitch channel?
I've been gaming since as long as I can remember, but and then I got into like kind of PC gaming, and I was doing the consoles and stuff for a long time, like through college and stuff. But since I started having kids, it started dwindling down. And I moved a few times. I didn't set up my computer, which I built like 5 years ago, and it was top of the line 5 years ago. But now it kind of is not as good as what's out there at all. And so. But anyway, so I was playing some Counter-Strike Source at night during this camp, just kind of to chill out. And I was in jiu-jitsu, and one of the guys in jiu-jitsu, he makes money streaming, and he was talking to me about it. I'm like, man, you make money doing that? I was maybe I'll just start streaming when I play video games, because I'm playing anyway. I might as well just start streaming it, and that's what I started doing.
Perfect. Match made in heaven. Now, there's been a lot of stories. I mean, Counter-Strike's one of those games where people don't really just play it casually. You're either, obsessed and completely invested in, or you're not. I mean, Mark Hunt was a guy who famously played a lot of Counter-Strike. Are you one of those guys as well, where you sort of stayed up, to ridiculous hours of the night just gaming away?
Oh, yeah, I've done it all. I mean, I think I became a little bit more mature with it. Like, I'm a little bit more structured with my time. But, oh, man, yeah, through the years, man, I was out of my mind with gaming. Not just Counter-Strike, which I've definitely spent lots of time on. But I mean, I was even geeking out. I was doing World of Warcraft. I was power leveling characters. I was out of my mind for a while. So yeah, definitely.
I think the thing that brings you down for me is when I game and I'm playing Rainbow Six, and everyone online are kids who are on the voice chat, just chatting away, and a part of me is just a little bit ashamed to speak up and just turn my headset off and maybe just go away on the side. But I guess, look, now that you're making money from it, it's a good excuse for the wife not to complain about you gaming too much. But let's talk about fighting. A couple of weeks ago marked the 6-year anniversary of your UFC debut. It's remarkable. It was March 3rd, 2011. It's when you defeated Alessio Sakara at UFC Live, Sanchez versus Campman. Did you stop and take a second to remember you had thus far?
Well, it's funny because I don't think I knew about that. So now that you mentioned it, wow, that's crazy. So I'm in the UFC 6 years?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. So now I'm reminiscing. Wow, that's crazy. I still feel like I'm a newbie over in the UFC. I guess not. I guess I'm starting to be a veteran. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride, man. It's been a crazy ride.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the most recent moments. I mean, we got to talk about UFC 205. Being a New Yorker and campaigning for so long to get MMA into that state, that fight, it was like a special moment for you, almost like a homecoming. Unfortunately, it obviously didn't go your way, didn't come to plan. But how did you sort of get over that loss mentally, and how were you able to put it behind you and move forward to, I guess, where you are now?
I mean, just the way anybody, anytime that you deal with any loss of any kind, I mean, you just gotta. There's only one way to deal with it. You got to be positive and move on and just keep working. So I learned from it, and I just got back to the gym and kept working. And I don't make the loss, who I am. I don't let it change me. It's just losing's part of the game, and you got to enjoy all parts of this game, and that is part of it. So I just take it in stride and keep on working, man.
How important was it for you to take another fight in New York? Obviously, UFC 210 is in Buffalo, New York. Some people are looking at it as possibly your way to kind of redeem yourself and get that W in that home state of yours, get a bit of closure. Was that any part of it when you took that fight at UFC 210, or were you sort of beyond that at that point?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely not. I'm not thinking. I didn't think about that at once. It's just, I mean, that was what was offered to fight in Buffalo, which is cool. You know, it's New York, even though it's like 7 hours away from where I'm at. It's still New York, and it's awesome to be able to fight in front of the New York fans who've been missing out on watching MMA for years. You know, it's the one state you haven't been able to watch it. So anytime to be able to entertain those people, it's a good time.
Yeah, for sure. The people who haven't been getting their Chris Weidman fix now, you're sort of making up for lost time. I'm just wondering, because after the Romero fight, a lot of people thought that you deserved, a bit of a confidence-building fight as a way to sort of reset and get your feet back under you. Instead, you got a really tough guy in Gegard Mousasi. Did you ask for such a stiff test in Mousasi, and how do you feel about getting such a challenging matchup, or was it just purely what the UFC offered you?
I mean, it's what I want. I want the best guys. I want the guys that. I mean, when have I ever fought a guy who isn't the top guy? So,
yeah.
It's just, and Mousasi, I think, would be almost a step down from the level of guys I've been fighting. So it's not, and he's on a nice win streak. He's developed a name for himself. He's experienced. He's been around. But I feel like every time he's stepped up and fought a top-notch guy, I think he came up short. So I think it's a great fight. People are behind him. People think he's good, and so if I go out there and dominate him, I think it brings me closer to getting back to that title contention.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people sort of wondering about Mousasi and sort of where he ranks in terms of your recent opponents, because like you mentioned, over the last few years, you really faced a murderer's row of greats. Where does he sort of rank for you in terms of the guys that you've recently fought?
I mean, I think. I don't know. I think, you watch him fight when he fought Lyoto Machida. I think he was on a win streak, and Mousasi it might have been right after I beat Mousasi. I don't remember exactly. But, I mean, he did everything he could to win that fight. He couldn't track down Mousasi. He couldn't get the win. I don't think he's beat a top guy before. And honestly, I haven't been really watching too much. I watched him more like live. I haven't scouted him or anything like that. My coaches are, obviously, but I don't really watch too much video on him. So I don't really know his history. So guys, I don't even know what I'm saying right now.
This is hilarious. You're gonna be in there at UFC 210 and not watch a single video of his, but that's all right. You've obviously got great coaches in Ray Longo and all the team down there. The thing that's different about this one is you're going to this fight on a 2-fight losing streak, and that's the first for you in what's been a really successful career for you thus far. Has this sort of changed your mindset or preparation heading into this fight?
No, not really. I mean, every fight always feels like it's the biggest fight of your life, and this is definitely no different. This is I got to win this fight. I got to go out there and not just win it, but I got to go out there and dominate it. And that's the pressure I put on myself, and I feel like I kind of do that for all my fights. But my mentality is strong. I feel very confident I could go out there and break him, put him in panic mode, and I just feel like I'm the better athlete and a more technical athlete in every aspect of the game. So,
yeah, so it's going to be an exciting matchup, and fans can't wait to see what happens. I mean, you mentioned the athletic advantage that you're going to have over Mousasi and how you're more dominant than him in a lot of areas of the game. Just going into that a little bit more, how do you sort of see this fight playing out? What do you feel is your biggest advantage apart from the wrestling in this one?
I think my pressure, my size, strength. I think, my range, I got long, pretty long. And the way I'm able to mix it up from the striking to the wrestling. I mean, I think he got outstruck by Lyoto Machida, and I outstruck Lyoto Machida. So if we really want to, go down the striking game, I'm confident with that too. So anywhere this fight is, I'm going to feel comfortable. And the fact is that, I could dictate this fight. I could get this fight to the ground, and he's going to be losing down there. And he's I think his biggest weakness is also his biggest strength. He's very relaxed, which is, a great trait. But sometimes him being relaxed, before you know it, the fight's over and he didn't get the job done. So I'm going to make him panic. He's got to realize that he has 3 rounds to win. To the judges, you can't just sit back, get taken down, and think it's okay. You're going to lose, and especially with me on top of him, he's not going to be able to relax like maybe he's relaxed with other people when he gets taken down. He's going to have to really worry about the ground and pound and the submissions. So
And as you mentioned, obviously he's coming in on a really good streak. A win over Mousasi in a time when the top end of the middleweight division, it's pretty crowded. What do you think that does for you? You've always been a guy who, even since that Luke Rockhold fight, you've still felt very, very close to the title. Do you think it's enough to earn you a title shot?
I don't know. I mean, I don't expect it. I also, wouldn't be shocked. It depends what's going on in the division. Depends on how good I look in this fight. I mean, Mousasi's on a great win streak, so if I go out there and completely dismantle him, we'll see what the fans want to see. But I have no problem taking a couple more fights. We'll see what, I got to beat whoever it takes to get to the top. I don't care.
There's obviously the rematch against Luke Rockhold that the fans are sort of looking forward to. Or you could get the winner of Bisping and GSP. If you had to choose between the two, would you be more interested, obviously, in the title fight or maybe even fighting Bisping if he lost against GSP? Or is the rematch against Luke Rockhold something that you'd be interested in as well?
I don't know. The biggest thing, what I want more than anything is the title. That's where the money's at, man. That's the bread and butter. So, getting the title is the number one thing I have my eyes set on. It doesn't. I got nothing with Rockhold. Whatever he fought a better fight than me. He beat me, and at one point we will get a rematch, and I'll redeem myself. But it's not something that I'm losing sleep over.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how you mentioned the title is the bread and butter, and that's where the money is, and that's perfectly been demonstrated by what's been going in the division recently with Michael Bisping sort of, I don't want to say commanding, because obviously the UFC is giving us these matchups, but, since he's been the champion, a lot of interesting things have been happening. Dan Henderson getting the title shot, and now GSP. What do you think about that whole situation in the division and guys like Yoel Romero and number one contender sort of been overlooked?
Well, it's definitely holding up the division, which sucks for everybody in the middleweight division. I understand GSP. He gets the opportunity to fight for the middleweight title against a guy who's probably less dangerous for him than even at welterweight, fighting a guy like Tyron Woodley. So it's a great opportunity for GSP. So I understand what he's doing. For Bisping, it's a great opportunity for him. He gets to make a lot of money fighting GSP, and it's a guy who's coming up from welterweight and hasn't fought in, 3 years. So, and he doesn't get, and he's not fighting a top contender in the middleweight division. So for those two guys, it's working out great. But for the rest of the division, it's kind of sucks.
I mean, we know you're a competitor who's chasing the same thing, but does a part of you sort of feel sorry for Yoel Romero a little bit when you see him getting overlooked for a title shot, even though he's the number one contender? And it kind of looked like he was going to get that title shot for a long time.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel for him, man. I mean, he deserves it. He beat me fair and square with a beautiful, beautiful knockout. So, I expected him to get it, but Bisping, I don't think wants that fight, and then all of a sudden, just bad timing with GSP coming back and Bisping opening his mouth trying to, want that fight. So it's just bad timing for him.
It's a fight that regardless the result is going to affect your division. What do you think? Who do you see winning out of Bisping and GSP?
Bisping's a bigger guy, way bigger guy than GSP. GSP's, talking about even going down to 55. So the size disparity is going to be a lot. And GSP's been out for a long time now. So that's the curveballs that we got going. But I think GSP has been a more proven winner over the years, and I think he can find a way to win.
Well, it's going to be an exciting fight, but we know George has always had a good relationship with the guys at Renzo Gracie Academy, and I'm just curious, have you guys ever trained together or sparred? And if so, how did he feel in terms of strength? Was he able to match the middleweights that you're used to facing?
He's definitely a smaller guy, and I haven't gone live with him or anything like that. We've worked together, but nothing could be told. But he's definitely a smaller guy, but he's capable of doing anything he wants to do.
Just curious, if he was to stick around long term at middleweight, do you see him potentially fighting some of the top contenders? And do you think that he might stick around long enough to say face you? And what is the relationship like between you guys? Is there enough to sort of stop a fight from happening, or would you be open to that fight sometime in the future?
No, I don't think he would. I don't think he's going to stick around at middleweight. First off, and second off, I don't think we would fight. There's too much. The Renzo Gracie affiliation, I think, is too strong. He trains that with Danaher. GSP's just a good dude. I don't know. I mean, unless he called me up and was like, "Listen, let's do it," we're going to make a lot of money doing it, then I'll be like, okay. But I have no interest in doing it.
Yeah, certainly. And look, before we move on from the topic, just quickly, we spoke to Luke Rockhold last week. We were talking to a few middleweights, and some of them are just upset at the situation because it does look like GSP is going to win the title and then go on to fight in other divisions and not really defend it. It's not really GSP's fault. I mean, he was offered the fight. How could you not take such a great opportunity? But as a middleweight in the division, knowing that potentially the champion won't be defending the belt and that belt possibly being held up, is that sort of a frustrating feeling for you?
I'm going to let it all play out. I'm not frustrated at all because I have something on my plate here that I got to focus on. That's obviously beating Mousasi, and that's all I'm really focused on. So there's nothing for me to be frustrated about at this point.
And before we let you go, Chris, and get a prediction for the Mousasi fight, I mean, you recently told a story about how you and John Vellante embarrassed some juice heads outside of a club by using your elite NCAA wrestling. I mean, everybody loves these kinds of crazy stories, these before they were in the UFC, things that happen outside of the octagon. Do you recall any other times where you've used wrestling to get out of a sticky situation?
Yeah, I mean, well, for that one, I was a fighter. I think I might have had like one or two fights MMA already, so I was already a fighter for that incident. But I just wasn't in the UFC, so no one, I wasn't like a big name or anything. But yeah, there was of course. There's been times I had to throw some people on their heads.
What happened? Give us the details. What's one of the times that you had to throw someone on their head?
Well, there was one time where I was outside this bar and I was with another small wrestler. He's like a 125-pounder, and this is when I was younger. I was like, I don't know, 20-something, 20, was it 22 or something, 21, I don't even know. And as we were leaving the club, my friend, like the small guy I was with, he's a 125-pound wrestler. He was pretty drunk, and I noticed he was surrounded by three kids, bigger kids. There were these kids that played basketball around the neighborhood. And they were like just making fun of him, and I came over and I was like, bro, what the hell are you guys doing? I kind of like started creating some conversation with them, and they basically were like, what the hell you think you're gonna do? Blah blah blah. We go back and forth. He pushes me. I said, don't touch me again. He pushed me again. I said, don't do that. I said, that's your last time pushing me. And when he went to go push me again, I just dropped him with a punch. And as I did that, one of his boys came behind me and tried to throw me in a rear naked choke. So he was circling around this, they were going to try to jump me. And when he did that, I took his arm and I arm threw him. And when I arm threw him over my back, I threw him over my back, he tried to keep his head up. And so when he tried to keep his head up, his head literally scraped across the concrete, and his face literally, like, just his skin just fell off his face, and he's screaming on the floor now. And I let go of him, and that kid I dropped with the first punch is starting to get up, so I get on top of him and I'm holding him. The third kid is getting beat up by my 125-pound wrestler. He got double legs, and that kid's beating him up. And so the one kid I dropped, I'm on top of him. I'm kind of just holding him there, and he's out of it. So I'm like, all right, let me get off. I get off. There was like a huge crowd around because the people who I beat up, people were happy I beat up. I'll just put it that way. And as I'm walking away, 3 cop cars like pull around the block because it was a big bar scene. It was like this big, it was around the colleges. It was around the college. So there's a lot of kids, and the cops are always around just making sure no one gets in trouble. So as soon as the cops come, my one friend started sprinting in one direction away. And I'm like, I don't want to sprint. I don't want the cops to, like, get out of the car and start chasing me and make it obvious it's me. I'm like, I feel like I just kind of defended myself, so I don't feel like I did anything wrong. So I started walking towards the cops, and there was a large crowd of people, so I just wanted to blend in. And then, but of course, the kid who's screaming with his face, all messed up, he's screaming, get the kid in the shirt. I think I was wearing like a red shirt. He's like, get the kid in the red shirt. And the cops grabbed me, throw me in the car, and they're like, yes, that kid's father is a cop at that point.
Oh, wow.
Next thing I know, these cops are like making stuff up. They're like trying to say I stomped on this kid's face, and I'm like, whoa. And they just were trying to like call me a liar. I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. I just defended myself, and they were picking on my friend. So I got a little trouble, but nothing too serious. And yeah, that's another instance where that happens.
Wow, what an amazing story, Chris. Thanks for sharing it with us. Look, we'll let you go. We know you're busy. Got to get back to training. As we let you go, your prediction for April 8th or 9th here in Australia, UFC 210 in Buffalo, New York. How do you see yourself beating Gegard Mousasi? Give us the prediction.
I think a TKO. round 2.
Well, there you go. TKO round 2. And luckily, there's no concrete in the octagon, so there won't be any face scraping going on this time around. The fight is April 8th in America, 9th in Australia. Obviously, Chris Weidman versus Gegard Mousasi, UFC 210 in Buffalo, New York. Make sure to follow Chris on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Weidman UFC. And check out his Twitch channel. He needs a bit of love, the All-American One. Watch Chris play Counter-Strike and a bunch of other things. Chris, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with us. We appreciate your time, and good luck on April 8th.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. El Guapo here. That means the pretty face. All you guys out there, you're listening to Submission Radio. Godspeed and party on.
All right, well, this man was on the show last week, and he was just so good we couldn't say no. Like a good scoop of ice cream, we've put him back in our bowl, and we have him back on the program today. Let's add some sprinkles to it and introduce him as Damon Martin from Fox Sports and NerdCoreMovement.com. Man, it is a pleasure to have you on 2 weeks in a row. Thank you so much for affording the luxury, Damon, and coming onto the program.
Of course, and thank you for having me on 2 weeks in a row. I do appreciate it.
Let's talk about UFC Brazil. I mean, look, there's been a couple of fun fights over the weekend that we just have to touch on. One of this is Barbosa's win over Beneil Dariush in what was a flying knee KO knockout that is just etched in my memory. I can think about it. I think about it all the time. I think about it in the shower. I just can't stop thinking about it. It's absolutely beautiful. Damon, your thoughts on Barbosa's performance, and more importantly, that way that he finished Dariush. What do you think that does for him?
Well, it's a huge win. I mean, it's a top 10 opponent, and it was also a good comeback for him because Beneil Dariush had a really good game plan in that first round and was winning, in my opinion. And then he slowed down, didn't quite do the same thing in the second round. He paid for it. Barbosa got his timing down, and he worked on timing that jab. And as soon as Dariush stepped forward on that jab, he timed that knee and threw it. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful adjustment and something that I think showed the evolution of Edson Barbosa because those are problems he had in the past. He had problems making those adjustments to fighters who would kind of come after him and beat him in a fashion like that in previous fights. Now we've kind of seen him mature as a fighter, and I thought that was a really well done performance. And then, of course, the finish was just amazing. I mean, that was just such an incredible knockout. It's funny, I was actually in Cincinnati over the weekend for a show, and so I missed part of the prelims. I ended up watching them later, but I got back in time for the final 3 fights. I walked in right after the Ray Borg Juicy Formiga fight, which I went back and rewatched later, but I was in a hotel room on Saturday night. And when Barbosa landed that KO, I literally screamed at the top of my lungs. I was like, oh, really loudly. And my girlfriend had to remind me. She's like, hey, we're in a hotel. I was like, oh, crap. Like, it was literally just that, like, gut-wrench reaction when I saw it. Like, I literally just was like, oh. So it was a pretty amazing moment.
I really, really wish we were there. And I think, I feel you because I think it's very reminiscent of the Michael Venom Page KO over Cyborg Evangelista Cyborg Santos. So a crazy moment for Barbosa. What are you thinking as far as what's next for him? Because he's on a really good streak. He beat Pettis, he beat Gilbert Melendez, Beneil Dariush with a stunning KO. And I mean, there's a few options. You could potentially give him the winner of Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. Don't really think they're going to give him a rematch to Tony Ferguson or say Khabib Nurmagomedov, but there's Michael Chiesa who doesn't have an opponent. There's Rafael Dos Anjos is on the sidelines. What are you thinking, Damon? Do any of those matchups seem like good ones to you?
Well, I think the most likely scenario is he fights Michael Chiesa because Chiesa's been looking for an opponent. I talked to him last week, and he's been itching for a chance to fight somebody, and I think that would kind of be that would be a fight that would kind of make sense. In a perfect world, I'd like to see Edson against either Nate Diaz or Tony Ferguson because I think the Nate Diaz fight would just be fantastic. I just don't think it'll ever happen. With his forward pressure and his boxing against Barbosa's kicking and his kickboxing game, I think that'd be a really fun matchup. But I just don't think we're going to see it. But I think the Tony Ferguson fight makes a lot of sense. If Khabib Nurmagomedov is out of action and they're looking to crown an interim champion. I mean, listen, the first fight was amazing. I was there. It was at a Ultimate Fighter Ultimate Fighter finale, and that was a great fight. It was a little bit back and forth, and then and then Barbosa ended up catching him in the I believe it was a Darce choke. So it was a great fight. I wouldn't mind seeing it in a 5-round fight version. I know Tony has asked for Nate Diaz. I know he said that yesterday on Ariel's show. And I know that's a fight that a lot of people would like to see. In my head, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Nate is going to accept a fight on a contract that doesn't have Conor McGregor's name on the other end of it, because he's basically risking, potential multi-million-dollar payday for a fight that would not pay him as much, and an interim title that, even if he wins, all it does is maybe guarantee him a fight with Conor, versus if he just sits and waits, I think Conor eventually is going to want to have that fight. So I think Tony and Barbosa, if Khabib is out until, let's say, September, what the rumors say, I think that's the fight that makes most sense. But if not, Edson against Michael Chiesa this summer would definitely be a fun fight.
100%. And I mean, the coaches, John Kavanagh, he mentioned it himself. Nate Diaz still remains as a top option for them when Conor McGregor does return back to MMA. So if you're Nate Diaz, you're sitting around right now playing the waiting game and enjoying the couple of bucks that you made from the other Conor McGregor fights. Let's talk about the Shogun win, however. It's been a while since we've seen Shogun get a W in the octagon. He was able to do that against Vellante in a fight that was sort of back and forth. Vellante didn't really use his head movement much, as it was in the pocket with Shogun, trading blows, had some success, but of course Shogun ended up getting that win. It's an interesting position that Shogun's in. We're used to talking about Shogun as the young up-and-comer. Now he's sort of a little bit older and in a later stage of his career. What do you sort of see for Shogun in his last few fights in the UFC?
It's tough because, Shogun's on a 3-fight win streak, which I noted on Saturday nights, the first 3-fight win streak he's ever had in his UFC career, which is kind of crazy when you think about the fact that he was once champion. But, listen, I still don't want to see Shogun against the best guys in that division. I don't want to see him against the Alexander Gustafssons or the Glover Teixeiras of the world. You know what I mean? I think the best thing that could happen to Shogun right now probably would be a potential matchup, which is still very dangerous. And I know it sounds like I'm insulting the guy by saying, he's not a top guy. He is a top guy. But I think a guy like, a Jimmy Manuwa, who would be a very hard striker, who's a very dangerous guy. But, Jimmy is kind of like, in a way, the new Ovince St. Preux, a guy that always knocks on the door of that top 5, but hasn't quite tackled that top 5. We're going to see him in action this weekend against Corey Anderson. It's a good test for him. But we still haven't seen Jimmy get over that hump of beating an Anthony Johnson or a Gustafsson, which are both of his losses in the UFC. If he can go out there and beat Corey Anderson, I think a fight with him and Shogun would be interesting. Two strikers, and I think, Manuwa is still raw enough that I think Shogun could give him a good fight. But I don't want to see Shogun against any of those top 5 guys. And unfortunately, where we're at in light heavyweight right now, there just aren't a lot of options available. I think a lot of the legendary fights, quote unquote, are gone. A lot of the guys who may have been around, even like a Rashad Evans, who would have been a fun fight, the fight we never got to see. Rashad's not light heavyweight anymore. So the options are limited. So I think, Jimmy Manuwa told me that he wanted to fight Shogun. He asked for Shogun before he got Corey Anderson. He said Shogun turned him down. Maybe now, if he can beat Corey Anderson, maybe Shogun and Jimmy Manuwa would be a fun fight.
That's interesting. I didn't know that he turned him down, but I'd be very, very curious to know why that is. And I think that, if Jimmy does win this weekend, which would be a great thing, and let's say he does beat Shogun, it's good because you got the number 4 guy who's never had a title shot, and now he's got a win over a legend, and that could be great for his resume. But I just wanted to ask sort of broadly, what do you think, Damon, of the light heavyweight division these days in 2017? It looks as thin as it's ever looked. Obviously, it's very top heavy. You've got great guys at the top like Cormier, Rumble Johnson, Gustafsson, Glover. You've got John Jones on the sidelines. But then, and again, not to disrespect the guy, but no one's really looking at Shogun as potentially a future title contender. And yet, if things go according to plan, let's say he beats Jimmy Manuwa, all of a sudden he's at number 4. And you've got a guy ranked number 4, which normally means they're close to a title shot. Shogun wouldn't really be so. What do you think about the light heavyweight division these days, Damon?
It's pretty sad, to be honest. It's funny, if you go back to the light heavyweight division from, let's say, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, it was called the best division in the UFC, the toughest division. When you had Tito and Chuck and Rampage and, guys like, just gritty, hard guys to fight like Keith Jardine who were around. And then, you brought in young guys like Bader, but you had, Rogerio Nogueira, and it was, and when they brought out Pride, they brought over Shogun and some of those guys, Forrest Griffin, you had all these guys. It was like, man, this is a really deep division. Now, when you look at it, it really comes down to basically the top 5. You got John Jones, who will return later this year. You got Cormier and Johnson. You got Gustafsson. You got Teixeira. And then it's a lot of, where do they go from here kind of fights. I mean, Ryan Bader, it sounds like he's not going to stick around with the UFC. Thankfully they re-signed Misha Serkinov, which is a big deal because they couldn't stand to lose that guy. But the options are limited right now, and it's not good. I mean, listen, unless some heavyweight fighters start dropping down to light heavyweight and really showing up, it's going to be tough to see that division go, very deep for very long, because you got to realize Daniel Cormier is 38 years old. I mean, I can't see, DC sticking around for more than a few more fights. I mean, that's not inside knowledge. That's just age and experience. I just don't think he's going to be around for another 4 or 5 years. And, there's only so many fights we have left to see. I mean, it's kind of amazing we're finally going to see Gustafsson and Teixeira, that we've never seen that fight before somehow. It was kind of, when it got booked, I was like, have we not seen that before? And I guess not. But there are limited options. I mean, we've already seen Johnson Gustafsson. We've seen Cormier Gustafsson. We've seen Gustafsson Jones. We've seen Teixeira Jones. I mean, we're starting to run down to the thin limits of where we can actually see new fights in that division, at least at the top anyways.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, and that's happening to the light heavyweight, and even some people even saying that heavyweight divisions at the moment. It's very, because those used to be the strong ones. Let's quickly talk about the main event from UFC Brazil, though. Gastelum's win over Vitor Belfort. It was actually a pretty good fight. Belfort had his moments where he actually landed some decent punches on Gastelum, but Gastelum really able to make a case for himself in the middleweight division. It almost seems a little bit confusing for fans who don't really know what the best thing for him to do is. Stay in middleweight or go back to welterweight? What do you think is next for Gastelum as he's sort of at the crossroads in his career and on a pretty good run over there in middleweight?
Would you like me to tell you what's next for Kelvin Gastelum? Because I'm not sure if you guys know this news or not.
Give us the scoop, Damon.
Kelvin Gastelum is fighting Anderson Silva at UFC 212 in Rio de Janeiro.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, just confirmed.
Wow.
What about this? News being confirmed, and good thing it just happened now, and we didn't talk about all this other Anderson Silva stuff, which would have been irrelevant at the time. Okay, so let's talk about this fight for a second, Damon. Your reaction to it? Are you a fan of this fight?
I like it. I mean, I what I don't want out of Anderson right now is I don't like the Anderson Silva fighting Yoel Romero kind of fights. I think at this point, he's not at that level right now. But Kelvin Gastelum is an interesting fight because Kelvin is a middleweight who is a smaller middleweight. So, of course, Anderson's going to have a size and a reach advantage on him. Anderson is a phenomenal striker. We know Kelvin has worked a ton on his boxing. I think this is a really interesting matchup, and I think it's kind of a win-win for the UFC and a win-win for Anderson Silva. If he beats Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who's coming off 2 big wins in middleweight, then he can start arguing for those bigger fights. He can start arguing for maybe a rematch with Chris Weidman or maybe a Gegard Mousasi or one of those top 5 guys. And if you get Kelvin Gastelum to beat Vitor Belfort and Anderson Silva back-to-back, even if neither guy is quite what they once were, you can't deny that Kelvin Gastelum will be right there. I mean, you'd have to put him in a big fight against, maybe the winner of a Jacare and Robert Whittaker. Maybe he gets Yoel Romero. I mean, listen, Michael Bisping and George St-Pierre probably aren't going to fight till summer. And if you're Yoel Romero, maybe you don't want to sit out that long. He had the big knockout over Chris Weidman in November, but maybe he doesn't want to sit out until, November to fight again. Maybe you could entice him into a matchup with Kelvin Gastelum at the end of summer, just, as an idea. Obviously, the winner of Jacare and Robert Whittaker, probably not going to get a title shot right away. So, I mean, the winner of that could face Kelvin Gastelum. So I think it's a great fight. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's a fun fight and a fight that I don't think a lot of people necessarily saw coming. But I like it. And I like that Kelvin Gastelum asked for it, too. He made it very known that he wanted that fight. And I enjoyed the fact that he got it.
I'm just curious. I don't know how close you are to the situation or what happened behind the scenes, but I know he really wanted that Nick Diaz fight. Was that fight ever presented to Nick Diaz? Do you know if Nick Diaz even sort of got the opportunity to take it? Or do you feel like it was maybe another opportunity that Nick Diaz passed on?
As far as I know, the fight was never offered. As far as I know, it's just something that Anderson wanted. I don't think the UFC had a lot of interest in booking it again. I think a lot of people forget that the first fight wasn't that great. It was okay. It wasn't a great fight, but I think the controversy and everything that happened afterwards with Nick testing positive and Anderson testing positive and suspensions and lawsuits and all this other stuff that happened afterwards, I think it's almost kind of like, let's just move past that when it gets to something else. And I think the UFC wants Nick Diaz back as a welterweight. I don't necessarily think they're that interested in him as a middleweight because he does inject some life into that welterweight division, some interest into that welterweight division. But as of right now, as far as I know, it was never offered. It was just something that Anderson wanted, but clearly he didn't get.
And apparently GSP wanted Nick Diaz upon his return, but according to the UFC, they wanted him in a title fight, so he got Bisping instead. And I'm with you on this Anderson Silva-Nick Diaz fight. I think too much bad juju, and the best part of that fight was when Nick Diaz laid down on the ground, and then a bunch of awesome photos and memories were taken. And the good thing about this fight with Gastelum and Silva is I feel like it's going to be fireworks. Your Gastelum's forward pressure, a guy that's really going to come forward, and Anderson being the counter striker, there will be opportunities where he can potentially, counter Gastelum and maybe, fire off another highlight reel finish that he's been kind of lacking for the last few years. So I think it's going to be a great fight. The other question, the contrasting one, is what do you do next with Vitor Belfort? He's got one fight left. For a while, I actually wanted to see Vitor Belfort fight Anderson Silva, and I thought maybe this would be a great fight to go out on, have that rematch. If he wins, it's a great way to go out his career, but he's talking about this Legends division. What do you think about what's next for Vitor, Damon?
Well, I think the next one is it for Vitor. He's not going to get the Legends division. I think we all know that's not happening. I think, you listen, if he's recovered enough from the TKO, if the doctors clear him in terms of his concussion or whatever he suffered at the hands of Kelvin Gastelum, if they can clear him for that card in Rio, let him have his retirement fight in front of his hometown fans. I get with that. Again, the biggest thing is his health concerns, of course. He did just get knocked out in March, and that fight's in June. But if he's cleared to fight and you can get him back in there that soon and let him have his moment, let him go out on a high spot. And I don't think you need to book him against anyone in the top 10. I think at this point, that's beyond him. I like the idea of him getting matched up with a guy like Sam Alvey, who is kind of a fun knockout striker who doesn't present a lot of speed but does present a lot of power. Maybe that's something that Vitor could use against him. He's still a very fast guy. We saw him land some good shots on Kelvin on Saturday night. Kelvin just was able to avoid it and then return fire. But I think that fight would be fun. I know Sam Alvey's got his fight booked with, I believe, Thales Lete's coming up in a couple months or in a month or so. But that would be a fun fight. I think a Tim Boetsch, somewhere around that level, maybe even a Hector Lombard. It's a dangerous fight, but maybe not, not necessarily, or a Johnny Hendricks, a guy that, is going to be a fun fight, but doesn't necessarily present the same kind of troubles or struggles that Vitor would normally face. So I think that I think that's kind of where I see Vitor. But again, I think the biggest thing is making sure he can get cleared to return to fight in June. And if that can happen, let him go out on his own terms. But biggest thing is making sure he's okay. Because again, he got knocked out in March. It's only a couple months away.
And I know you're going to think we're biased, Damon, but what about our man Dan Kelly? I mean, this man has got a big win over Rashad Evans, and also a good opportunity for Vitor to possibly go out on top. It's a good sort of challenge for him. What would you think about Dad's Army going over there and fighting Vitor for his last fight?
You know what? And I apologize for not even thinking of that. You guys are brilliant, because that actually would be the one. I like that one very much. What's funny is I actually thought about Rashad, but then I remember, Rashad and Vitor are teammates, former teammates. I don't know necessarily that they'd want to fight each other, and I don't know that Rashad would want to, possibly beat a friend, in his retirement fight. You know what I mean? I feel like that would just be a bad idea. Yeah, I think Dan Kelly would be a great choice. I think that would be good, because Dan Kelly is a fun fighter. He's a dangerous fighter, but he's, again, not, kind of like Sam Alvey. He's not the kind of guy you're going to typically expect to go in there and just physically, beat up Vitor Belfort. What we've seen him kind of have happen in his last few fights. I think there's less danger in fighting a Dan Kelly than there would be another fight. And that's not an insult to Dan Kelly. It's just Dan Kelly's not typically known as a knockout striker. He's not typically known as a guy who goes out there and out-quicks guys, so to speak, on the feet. But he can absolutely beat Vitor Belfort. I think he can absolutely win that fight, but I don't think it's the same danger level as putting him in there with a higher ranked middleweight who has that kind of knockout power, because Vitor's been knocked out 3 fights in a row. I don't know necessarily that we need to see him in there against another guy who can land one punch and put him away, or at least it's known for one punch and put him away.
All right, well, Damon, apology accepted. I think Dan Kelly versus Vitor Belfort, unanimously the fight to make. Before we get off the middleweight division, just got to ask about this Romero situation where he was on the MMA Hour and he spoke about how he'd like an interim title fight with Anderson Silva. Obviously, because the news just broke, I think literally less than half an hour ago about this Gastelum Anderson Silva fight, that's not going to happen. There'll be no interim title fight. It kind of seemed a little bit far-fetched from the very beginning that Yoel Romero would want a title fight, an interim title fight, which realistically would probably be taking place before the actual title fight between GSP and Bisping, because I think rumors are that's going to be around about September after International Fight Week. What do you think? What do you think of Romero's predicament, and what do you do with him? Are there any other options for him?
Well, you feel for Yoel Romero because, it's not like the guy did anything wrong. He did everything that he had to do to get a title shot. I mean, you can point at a couple of, suspect things that happened in his fights maybe, but he's earned the shot, and he heard numerous times Dana White saying he's the guy, and then, it didn't happen. I think the interim title idea was always far-fetched. Listen, Bisping's not defending the title. He is defending the title. He's just not defending it against Romero. It's an even more, it's an even different situation from what's going on in the lightweight division, which I think crowning an interim champion 4 months after Conor McGregor won the title was a little ridiculous. Clearly that kind of fell apart. I'm sure Conor is still kind of laughing to himself somewhere about that whole thing. But in this situation, Michael Bisping is defending the title. I mean, why would you crown an interim champion when there's the champion is defending his belt? He's just not defending it against you, against you, Yoel Romero. So I feel for the guy, and I understand his frustration. I feel for him the same way I feel for Damian Maia. But listen, that's the sport, and I know I've said it on the show before, and I keep harping on it. And I'm sorry to keep saying it, but I just keep saying it to drill it into people's heads. There's no such thing as the word deserves in mixed martial arts. This is entertainment as much as it's a sport. I know a lot of people hate hearing that, but if fights like Bisping and GSP don't prove that, nothing will. So what do you do with Yoel Romero? Like I said, maybe he gets the winner of Anderson Silva, Kelvin Gastelum. I would be completely okay with that. Maybe he gets the winner of Jacare and Robert Whittaker, especially if Robert Whittaker wins. I mean, that would be a really interesting match and one we haven't seen before. Or potentially he just sits and waits. And I know financially that sucks. And it sucks you have to sit and wait and hope that, Bisping or GSP would win in, like you said, maybe September, and they'd want to turn around and fight as early as, let's say, like December or January next year. And that sucks for Yoel Romero. But like I said, that's the sport, man. It's unfortunate, but that's just the sport we live in, man. That's all there is to it. I'm sure that Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov were not happy when Conor McGregor jumped over both of them to get the shot at Eddie Alvarez, but that's the game we play. The people who are going to bring in put the butts in the seats and put people into viewers to watch on television are typically the ones that are going to end up in those fights, and that's what Conor McGregor is. That's what George St-Pierre is, and unfortunately, guys like Yoel Romero and Damian Maia and Tony Ferguson, unfortunately, they just have to live with it.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the Chris Weidman, Mousasi fight as well. Who knows? Maybe the winner of that, a rematch or a new fight there. But I think the sad thing about guys like Maia and Romero is just the fact they're a bit older. So while they wait on the sidelines and they're sort of about that 39, late 30s, they lose a little bit of time. But like Damon says, it's about the entertainment, and people can't really get upset about this thing. It's a different kind of world. Let's talk about another kind of world, Damon, this crazy cross-promotional world of boxing and MMA. Of course, everybody went crazy around the world where they saw T-Mobile was possibly reserving a date. Well, we're reserving a date for June 10th, and a lot of people are possibly thinking it has something to do with the McGregor-Mayweather fight. What do you know about this? Have there been any links to this fight whatsoever with this date being reserved?
From what I've heard, there's no chance it happens in June. I mean, if it does come together, I would be shocked if it comes together. I think what you're seeing here with even the date that was proposed, or the rumored reservation held at T-Mobile Arena, and combine that with what we saw Floyd say over the weekend, with he's coming out of retirement, he wants Conor, let's fight in June. I mean, all these things to me seem interconnected. What that means to me is two things. One, Floyd is trying to force Conor's hand into accepting the deal as it stands, meaning he wants him to accept the financial package that's on the line right now, whatever that may be. Clearly, Conor doesn't agree with the package. So that's basically what, he's trying to force him into it. And then two, by putting the date in June, which is only about 2 months away. I mean, listen, we're already almost mid-March already. We got April and May, and then June 10th. I mean, that's literally 2 months away. What you're trying to do is you're trying to force Conor into a quicker camp to get ready for the fight. And then if he turns it down, or if he says, I don't want to fight in June, then you're making Conor look the worst. You're making him take the egg on the face to say, I turned down the fight, which I don't think is true. I really don't think that's the case. But I think that's all this is. This is posturing to get a response out of Conor McGregor, because all the things that Conor said, now Floyd is responding, and he's giving things. He's saying, I'm out of retirement. He's saying, sign the papers. He's saying, let's do it in June. He's giving all these things that make it look like he's trying to make the fight happen. But what he's really doing is he's trying to make the fight happen while simultaneously kind of making Conor look bad. Now, the date I've heard for this fight, much more realistic. And what I've heard been proposed for months now is September. Floyd typically likes to fight in May or September. I heard there was a date in September, a specific date in September they were looking at as a potential showdown for Mayweather and McGregor. Now, just like in June, there's a lot that has to happen before that comes together, but I think September is much more realistic. I would say the chances of anything happening in June are slim to none. But again, anything can happen. If you remember when Mayweather and Pacquiao got booked, it was actually kind of late. Like, they didn't get it actually 100% signed and confirmed until I won't say weeks before the fight, but it was pretty close to the fight date when they actually got it confirmed. So anything's possible, but I would look at September as a much more realistic date than I would June.
Yeah, and you know what? It's incredibly frustrating because you go through Facebook and you see like all these people liking and commenting on these bullshit clickbait articles, which are from, you know, outlets that don't really cover the sport of MMA or boxing. They're betting websites and, you know, other bullshit websites like that where they're saying that, you know, it's all confirmed, it's locked in, and I feel bad for anybody who's seeing that and tagging their friends and booking holidays, booking flights, booking accommodations. And so it just goes to show that, you know, even though we sit around here and we sort of, you know, have somewhat of insight, there's a lot of people that don't, and they kind of make decisions because of that. What date are you hearing, though, Damon, in September? Do you know if it's going to be early September, late September? What else can you tell us about this?
From what I've heard, it's if I remember correctly, it's mid-September is about the time that I've heard. Basically, from what I've heard, let me see if I can remember the date that I was the date that I heard I was told. Now again, this is this is one of those things where where it's all rumor, but there was a date in September that was kind of bantered about and talked about. And let me look at my calendar here and see if I can remember the exact date. September 16th is the date that I heard. Now again, take that with a big grain of salt. Because that is, at the end of the day, still just a date. It's just a Saturday. You know what I mean? It could be any Saturday. I say September 16th. Somebody else could say, oh, no, I heard September 23rd. And somebody else will come back and say, I heard September 9th. September 16th is a date that I heard bantered about, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could just be, hey, we were thinking about this date, and let's kind of leak it out there. Same reason I think the information about the confirmed date being held at T-Mobile Arena was leaked out there. It's just a matter of getting pressure put on one or both parties to sign a deal. And that's even the September 16th date I heard, I wouldn't necessarily believe it. That's why I never reported it. It's just because it's just rumor. There's nothing written in stone to say it's actually going to happen on that date.
Yeah, well, I mean, the speculation will continue. I'm expecting a lot more articles to come out in the future. Dana White says this fight isn't close to being done yet. I'm curious to see how much articles and how many fake dates and things are going to come out until we actually get the real one. But Damon, thank you so much for coming on the program, guys. You can follow Damon on Twitter at Damon Martin. And, of course, go on nerdcoremovement.com, which is where all the awesome action lives, all the pop culture stuff that Damon talks about, a lot of big movies coming out, Power Rangers coming out this month. Can't wait to see Damon's review. And as we wrap up the show, we just want to quickly thank some of the guests that have been on this week as well. The guys from FloCombat, Duane and Hunter, thank you so much for coming onto the program. Tyson Pedro for coming onto the program. Chris Weidman making his Submission Radio debut. Chris, thanks for being on the program. Stephen Thompson, always a pleasure to have on the show. So much fun talking to him. And Tommy Toehold, celebrating that big 5-year anniversary. Loved having him on the show in both forms, as behind the scenes and also as Tommy Toehold in character. Also, quick reminder to everybody out there, make sure to submit your iTunes review. The time is coming closer for John Kavanagh to come down to Australia, do his shows in Melbourne and Sydney. We want that iTunes review from you guys so you guys can have that opportunity to win a double pass. And with that, Casper, next week, 3-year anniversary.
Yeah, Sexy Times, March 22nd in 2014 was officially the first ever episode of Submission Radio. So how poetic that 3 years later it's going to be March 22nd. It just so happens, people say, hey, why'd you move the show to Wednesdays? Well, it couldn't have worked out better. We'll be celebrating 3 years on a juicy, sexy episode of Submission Radio next week. Till then, stay safe. We'll catch you then.